And good afternoon. We want to continue to keep you updated on an ongoing breaking news situation in Greenville County. Just after 12:30 this afternoon, the school resource officer at Tanglewood Middle School in Greenville called for backup, saying that a student had been shot. There are more than 100 Greenville County deputies on the scene. We have Sky 4 there. They are telling us, deputies, that they believe the shooter may be another student, but they are still working to confirm the shooter. Sky 4 is above the scene, and we have just seen almost 24 school buses pull up in front of the school. They are lined up in front of the school, and it appears that they are bringing students out. Again, they are lined on either side with deputies that appear to be in bulletproof vests. A wider picture here from Sky 4 so that you can see, yes, school buses lined up. I don't want to make any assumptions. I only want to tell you what I know. They do seem to be taking students out of the school in a very controlled and effective way. As you can see, too, Tanglewood Middle it's surrounded mostly by woods. There are not many houses close by. It is in a rural area of Greenville County. Again, just after 12:30 this afternoon, the school resource officer requested emergency backup, saying that a student had been shot. The gunshot victim has been transported to the hospital. We do not know the condition of the gunshot victim, but again, we're continuing to keep you updated on things as we can confirm them. Estimated more than 100 deputies on the scene. As far as we know, they are still working to confirm the identity of the shooter, but as you can see, they are taking students in an orderly way out of the front of the school, again, lined up with deputies and law enforcement officers on each side, making sure that the students are protected as they get into these buses. And I have counted more than 20 school buses lined up. We don't see any other activity around the school, but it does seem to be a very orderly situation at Tanglewood Middle School in Greenville County. Of course, we never like to see situations or have to tell you about situations where this is the case of students being injured, but we only want to report what we know and what we can confirm. They are taking the students to Brookwood Church. According to the school spokesperson, Brookwood Church is where the students will be taken now. Again, school buses from Greenville County Schools lined up to transport them safely to Brookwood Church. That is according to a school spokesperson. Sky 4 over the scene. As you can see there, we were told by the Greenville County Sheriff's Office that there are more than 100 officers on the scene. You can see those law enforcement cars lined up alongside the buses there as the buses wait to transport the students to Brookwood Church. The students seem to be moving very calmly. We don't know how much the students know either at this point. We assume that they would have been told why they're being taken out of the school. Again, these are middle school students, so clearly they're able to understand. They're at the age where they can discern what they need to do and how they best need to make this happen. If you're just tuning in, you are looking at a live picture from Sky 4 over Tanglewood Middle School. This is in Greenville County, where at just after 12:30, a school resource officer called Greenville County Sheriff's Office requesting backup, saying that a student had been shot at the school or on the school property. There has been one gunshot victim that we know about. That person has been transported to the hospital. We don't know the condition of the person who was shot. We are working to find that out. Greenville County Sheriff's Office says that they have more than 100 officers on the scene, and you're seeing students filing out of the front of the building very calmly, loading onto the school buses. We're told by a school spokesperson that the students are being taken to Brookwood Church. That's a very large church where students would be able to assemble and have plenty of room to evacuate the entire school. Again, authorities are also telling us that they believe the shooter may also be a student. We don't have any word on whether or not the shooter has been apprehended, but they do believe that it is a student. As you can see, it looks like a very calm, very orderly situation. Lots of law enforcement on the scene. making sure that the students feel safe as they evacuate the school. The students seem to be coming out in a very calm fashion. That's very important in a situation like this, that people maintain their calm. We don't know if parents are being notified, or parents, if you're being notified by watching us, but thank you for tuning to WYFF News 4. We are bringing you all information that we can confirm, and we do have crews that are heading to the scene, but as you can see, Sky 4 giving us a very good picture of the calm that is around this situation. Calm is certainly not a word that we would associate with a school shooting. But thanks to the quick action of the school resource officer, the quick action of Greenville County Sheriff's deputies in getting on that scene and lining the approach to the schools so that the school buses could be escorted properly, the quick action of Greenville County Schools to be able to get these buses on the scene so quickly and figure out how to get these students out of the school in an orderly fashion. You can see that the deputies there and the law enforcement personnel, most of them are wearing body armor, and they are standing on either side of that sidewalk so that the students are assured of their safety as they get on these school buses one by one, very calmly. No students are coming out until the next bus approaches and is ready to accept those students. So you see the next bus has just pulled up. I believe there are 3 now, and as you can see, they are being escorted by law enforcement as they enter the premises. Take a look there at the bottom of your screen. You can see that there are a lot of law enforcement vehicles, dozens of law enforcement vehicles lining the route, blocking the routes. The homes are not very close to Tanglewood. Tanglewood is mostly surrounded by trees and woods. Here you see the response team is set up. They do have emergency medical vehicles on hand. Those have not been called into action yet, but you also see the SWAT team set up right there so that really Greenville County law enforcement able to handle anything that they need to respond to at this point. All kinds of response vehicles and a very, very heavy presence of law enforcement, all keeping students calm. And we hope, as parents are watching, that you will find calm in this as well, that this situation seems to be locked down and very much in control. Of course, there'll be a number of questions that these students will have about what happened and how could something like this happen. But those are questions that will be answered at a later time. Right now, the priority is getting these students calmly and safely out of the school. As you see there in the center of your screen, the next school bus is lined up and the students are filing in, again, very calmly. They're being taken to Brookwood Church nearby, where they will be stationed until, I suppose, parents can be called and until the situation is considered clear by law enforcement, which likely will not happen until law enforcement feels confident that they have the right person in custody in terms of who is responsible for this shooting, who or whom. We don't know if there's one or more, but we are being told that law enforcement believes that the shooter may be another student. Again, kudos to all of the people involved, the Greenville County Schools, Greenville County Sheriff's Office, all of the law enforcement involved. The very quick response of the school resource officer who called just before 12:30 this afternoon and asked for backup, saying that there had been a shooting at the school. The school resource officer requesting emergency backup, saying that a student had been shot. The gunshot victim, again, has been transported to the hospital. We are working to try to learn the condition of that shooting victim. We have a very great presence of law enforcement on the scene, safely getting these students out of the school and onto school buses and taken to Brookwood Church. You see Sky 4 over the scene here. And all of these black cars that you see lined up at the top of your screen on the other side of the school buses, those are law enforcement vehicles. So again, these school buses are being very well protected. The students, as they walk out of the school very calmly, they're very well protected with law enforcement officers lining that sidewalk on each side, making sure that the students feel safe, making sure that the students are safe. This is something that no school ever wants to experience, no parent ever wants to experience, but there has been a great deal of discussion and study and planning for instances like this when they occur, so that every player in the scenario knows exactly what his or her responsibility is. Students, sadly, have to practice for these scenarios. We hate that our children have to go through that, but that is the age and day in which we live. And you can see by the calm and orderly fashion in which the students are coming out, by the school buses that are quickly lined up, enough to evacuate the entire school, by the presence of law enforcement, that these drills that students and school resource officers and law enforcement go through, they very clearly pay off in a situation like today. Everyone knows exactly what is expected of them. Everybody knows exactly where to go and what they need to be doing. And it seems to be a very impressively orderly situation right now. We have another group of students coming out now. Again, we're not sure what the students are being told, but certainly, again, with these active shooter scenarios that they are informed of as practice days, they probably understand exactly what is expected of them. They're coming out quietly and calmly, walking in single file as law enforcement continues to secure the perimeter of the school, very close to the school building, and also the outer perimeter of the school, where the command center is set up, and where there are also emergency vehicles on standby, emergency medical vehicles on standby. Also saw fire and rescue on standby. No other cars are moving from the parking lot, but the presence, it looks also like perhaps some Greenville City Police vehicles are helping out as well. Always very impressive to see how law enforcement coordinate with one another in situations like these, where there is a large and grave circumstance going on, with sheriffs working with police, working with school resource officers. Yes, those are Greenville police cars that we see on hand right there, right outside of the school, and Greenville County Sheriff's deputies. We also see Highway Patrol. Again, a very, very large presence of law enforcement, keeping the students safe, and very important that they feel safe as well, that they understand that the people who are supposed to protect them are indeed doing that. We look forward to getting information from law enforcement on who the shooter or shooters are, but we don't have any word as to whether or not the shooter is in custody. Greenville County Sheriff's Office shared with us that they believe the shooter may be another student. And if you're just tuning in, we want to update you. You're looking live from Sky 4 above Tanglewood Middle School in Greenville County, where just before 12:30 this afternoon, the school resource officer called Greenville County Sheriff's Office asking for backup and reporting that a student had been shot at the school. That student has been transported to the hospital. We don't know the condition of the student, but they are still looking for the shooter as far as we know. We will get you any information as soon as we can confirm that what we are going to tell you is actually correct. We don't want to give you any misinformation or any thoughts of our own, only what we know to be true. Look at this wide shot from Sky 4, and you can see that there is an incredible law enforcement presence here. We've seen South Carolina Highway Patrol, a great number of vehicles from the Sheriff's Office, Greenville City Police also on the scene, and you see school buses from the Greenville County schools lined up, and they are taking the students from the school, in a very orderly fashion. We've been told by the school spokesperson that they are going to be taking the students to Brookwood Church, where they can assemble safely. And I'm sure parents are being notified as well. There's a really tremendous emergency response system that Greenville County Schools has in place, where they are able to get in touch with parents very quickly and alert parents as to what is going on at schools if an incident like this does happen. So I know parents are taking great relief in that. Here you're seeing just off the school grounds in a parking lot where the command center is being set up. The command unit, you'll see in just a second, is a large sort of black tractor trailer truck. There's an emergency response vehicle here that's being waved out. We don't know if they're transporting someone, but there are emergency medical vehicles there on that scene, as well as fire vehicles. A few homes nearby and a small church nearby, but mostly Tanglewood Middle is surrounded by woods. Not a lot of buildings very close by to the school. But this is the command center where law enforcement and other emergency response teams are gathered, and the school bus is back all the way up to that area. Also lining the route to the school, you will see law enforcement vehicles, mostly along that route, those black vehicles from the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, and school buses lined up. A very impressive way that they are evacuating students from the school in a very orderly way. Very clearly, the response team, active shooter response practices that law enforcement, that Greenville County schools, and that even students and teachers practice regularly is coming into play here. As you can see that this, in spite of a very harrowing situation, it is a very calm scene as students are being taken out of the school. Law enforcement in their bulletproof vests. We do have crews that are on the scene. We'll be able to bring you a live report from them in just a couple of minutes here. But you're looking at Sky 4 live above the scene of Tanglewood Middle School, where a student has been shot. Greenville County Sheriff's Office confirming that a student has been shot. The call came in to them just before 12:30 from the school resource officer. You can see that there are police dogs or law enforcement dogs patrolling there in front of the school. Right now, the students are not being brought out in just immediately, but they have filled several buses with students who are being taken to Brookwood Church. That's according to school spokespeople. Buses lined up, taking the students safely out of the school. That tremendous law enforcement presence on the school, very calming, as we now see more students coming out to get on those school buses. And there are plenty of school buses to accommodate whatever the needs are. Tim Waller, spokesperson for Greenville County Schools, has just issued this statement. I'm going to read it to you, quoting exactly. This is from Greenville County Schools spokesperson Tim Waller. At approximately 12:30 p.m., Greenville County School had report of shots fired inside the building at Tanglewood Middle School. The school resource officer immediately responded and notified law enforcement. Multiple law enforcement agencies have responded. One student has been transported to the hospital. Their condition is unknown at this time. All students will be transported to Brookwood Church. That address is 580 Brookwood Point Place, Simpsonville, South Carolina, 29681. That's where parents will be reunited with their student. Parents will not be able to pick up their student at Tanglewood. Parents will need to have identification in order to pick up their student. We will share more information as soon as possible. So it's very important to note, please do not go to Brookwood Church. This is where these students are being taken. This is where their parents will meet them. If you are not a parent of a student or a guardian or grandparent, someone who is legally able to pick up the students, please stay away from Brookwood Church. And again, parents, please know that you will need to have identification so that you can pick up your student. We expect to get more information from Greenville County Schools as soon as we learn more. Let's go to Kylie Jones. Kylie is on the scene there near Tanglewood. And Kylie, what are you seeing from the ground?
Well, Jane, definitely a tense situation. Things are still very unclear for a lot of parents. Just a few minutes ago when we were getting over here, we saw parents running down the sidewalks crying. There was a lot of traffic backed up. Cars were being redirected, but those parents were running down the sidewalk carrying their little children in tears, trying to figure out where their children were. As you can see behind me, a very strong police and law enforcement presence right now. The Greenville County Sheriff's Office says more than 100 deputies are out here surrounding Tanglewood Middle School. Deputies, like you have been telling us, Jane, say that one student has been shot. The Greenville County Sheriff's Office is working to find that shooter, who they do believe is a student. I'm going to step out of the way and give you a look at the scene right now. This is the Speedy Mart food store and gas station. We are at the corner of Old Easley Bridge Road and Old Dunham Bridge Road right now. Again, a lot of law enforcement officers on scene. You can just see people kind of pacing around on their phones, talking to each other, trying to figure out what exactly is going on, where their children are. Now, I spoke to an aunt just a few minutes ago right down the street. She is just beside herself. She doesn't even know what is going on. She says her nephew was inside that school at the time of that shooting, and she is just terrified. She said he was probably crying at this point because he just did not know what was going on. She has no word on when she's going to be able to get to him right now. Again, as you can see, we are a little distance past Tanglewood Middle School. We can only get up so close. We're actually at a staging area right now at Liberty Ministries Church. Again, this is right near the corner of Old Easley Bridge Road and Old Dunham Road. This staging area right here will be where we hope to learn more information from law enforcement officers. We're trying to figure out when exactly that will happen. But I just spoke with someone from the Greenville County Sheriff's Office. He says they're just not sure when they'll be able to give us more information. But again, as Jane has been saying, we do know that one student has been shot. The Greenville County Sheriff's Office says that student was taken to the hospital. Again, just a lot of fear and panic in the eyes of people on the streets right now. There are crowds of people, again, on their phones trying to figure out what is going on. As for drivers and other people in the area, you're going to want to avoid the Tanglewood Middle School area because traffic is being redirected around this entire area. Again, more than 100 deputies on scene right now trying to figure out what's going on. We will continue to work and bring you live team coverage from this, and we'll continue to keep you updated on this developing story. But for now, I'm live in Greenville County. Kylie Jones, WYFF News 4. Jane, I'll send it back over to you.
Okay, and Kylie, one quick question for you. From Sky 4, it looks like we were seeing South Carolina Highway Patrol, Greenville County deputies, also Greenville City Police. Are you seeing other law enforcement there at the staging area?
Yeah, Jane, we actually are. I even saw a Parker fire truck. That just goes to show just how big the law enforcement presence is here. You can actually see those school buses behind me. We believe those buses are going to pick up the children. I actually heard from a parent down there that children may be being taken out of school and being moved to another school and another part in the county. We're trying to figure out if that is true and confirm that information right now. And you can hear choppers up in the sky right now. Just a lot going on. We're trying to figure out exactly what is going on. We'll continue to keep you updated.
Excellent. Kylie, we are just hearing from Greenville County Sheriff's Office that the shooter is in custody. So the shooter is in custody. Nigel Robertson joining me now on the desk as we cover these stories. And Nigel, certainly not the kind of thing we ever want to see, but it has been very impressive to see how quickly and how calmly both law enforcement and the Greenville County school system and Tanglewood Middle School in particular have responded to this.
Jane, it's one of those moments as a parent. I've got a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary school student, and when I got that alert,
yeah,
my heart just sank, just like every parent in Greenville County. And I instantly wanted to reach out, text my child, make sure they were safe. And then I rushed into work just to learn all this information. So I feel like every other parent in the area, nervous, scared, and wanting as much information as possible.
And that's one of the things that I just brought up a moment ago, Nigel. My son is a graduate of Greenville County Schools. He finished in 2017. I was impressed as a parent that there is a really quick emergency alert system set up by Greenville County Schools to alert parents. Is that how you found out about it? You heard from the school?
Yeah, well, and my wife is a teacher as well. So it's all, the information goes out. The schools are notified of what's going on just so they could keep the students in all the schools safe. And then parents are notified. So it is an orderly process. And, you know, we as parents rehearse this all the time. The students know, the schools know. It goes out as very fast and a phone blast. But you know, this is what we're seeing here on the screen. Although it's orderly, and we do know the shooter, according to the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, is in custody. We know one student has been shot at Tanglewood Middle School. Every single student in that school, in the area, is in the process of meeting up with their parents, kept safe at the schools. So this is a process that's going to take all day as all the schools begin to let out and so on, just because of the severity of this situation.
Absolutely. And as Kylie said too, there are a number of very nervous parents. They were, Kylie said that she saw some of them coming down the sidewalk. So it bears repeating that we have heard from Tim Waller, who is the spokesperson for Greenville County Schools, that you see these buses from Sky 4, they're transporting the students to Brookwood Church. Brookwood Church address is 580 Brookwood Point Place, Simpsonville, South Carolina. So if you are a parent of a Tanglewood Middle School student, that is where you need to go, 580 Brookwood Point Place in Simpsonville. Please, only parents or guardians, people who would be picking up a child, a student, please no one else go there. Allow this scene to be as calm as possible. But that, parents, is where you will be reunited with your students, and you will, according to Greenville County Schools, you will need to have identification to pick up your student. And of course, that's a great precaution.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that these students stay safe, even from the point of where they have been evacuated to, and they want to make sure that these students get completely home safely. And Nigel, I mean, everyone in your family is in a school right now. So these are going to be discussions that parents will have, whether they're Tanglewood Middle School parents or parents who are in North Carolina, Georgia, anywhere in our viewing area. This is going to be a big discussion that parents have tonight with their students. And of course, as we learn more, we don't know the condition of the student who was shot, but we will keep you updated on that. But we have heard from the Sheriff's Office, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, that the shooter is in custody. My
middle schooler does not go to Tanglewood, but I want to hug him right now. My elementary student want to hug, I just want to see their faces, you know, so my high school student as well, and my wife.
Yeah, you know, that probably also begs the question that if you do have students in school, probably your instinct right now is to get in the car and go get your child out of school, but we can't really recommend that. No. Your students are fine where they are. Their teachers will probably be explaining to them what's going on. Teachers have been taught exactly how to make these explanations, because again, sadly, these active shooter drills and active shooter skills are needed, and they have been embedded in our teachers and our education professionals. So if your instinct is to go and pick up your child, perhaps let them stay where they are. They can get a good explanation from the school resource officers and teachers and principals and educators. School counselors can help your student probably a little bit more than you can right now, and then you can prepare yourself for that conversation when your students get home.
For those just joining us, I want to go ahead and read the statement from Tim Waller with Greenville County Schools. At approximately 12:30 p.m., Greenville County Schools had reports of shots fired inside the building at Tanglewood Middle School. The school resource officer immediately responded and notified law enforcement. Multiple law enforcement agencies have responded. One student has been transported to the hospital, and their condition is unknown at this time. All students, as Jane was just mentioning, will be transported to Brookwood Church. That is 580 Brookwood Point Place. This is in Simpsonville, where parents will be able to be reunited with their student. Parents will not be able to pick up their student at Tanglewood. Obviously, Tanglewood is a crime scene.
Yeah.
A shooting happened at the middle school. So you will not be able to pick up your students at the middle school. Parents do need to have identification in order to pick up their student. And of course, the Greenville County School District will share more information as this story unfolds. And we do want to tell you that according to the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, the shooter is in custody.
There's a scene that's been set up. The staging area is at Liberty Ministries Church. There's not a lot around Tanglewood. It's mostly surrounded by a wooded area, but there are just a few homes in this small church, Liberty Ministries Church. That's where the staging area for law enforcement is, and so they are really managing every vehicle that comes anywhere near the school. They've lined the whole streets near the school with law enforcement vehicles. As you can see here from our live pictures from Sky 4, students are coming out of the school. They have been for the past probably 40 minutes in a very orderly fashion. There are law enforcement officers on each side of where the students walk. Those law enforcement officers are in vest and protective gear as they can provide a protective barrier for the students. Now, we do know that the shooter is in custody, but if you're a middle school student and you're leaving your school where this has just happened, the presence of law enforcement is certainly a very calming one, I'm certain, as they load up on these buses to head over to Brookwood Church.
And I got to tell you, as I was rushing to get into the studio here, I was watching our Facebook Live from Sky 4, and I saw all the officers lined up outside of the school. Mind you, I was getting nuggets of information. I didn't know everything that was happening, but just to see all that law enforcement presence on the school grounds did make me feel better.
It does, and they were there immediately. Again,
yes, they were.
Multiple law enforcement systems working together. You see on each side of these school buses, those are Greenville City Police vehicles. Greenville County Sheriff's officers have lined the entire route. Many sheriff's deputies standing there. We've also seen vehicles, and we see one right behind those two police cars. We see that South Carolina Highway Patrol is on the scene as well. Very impressive how law enforcement works together in situations like this and communicate so effectively.
Yeah, and the Greenville County School District. Look at that. One bus after another lined up, filling up the buses and then moving along. All right, we are hearing that our Kylie Jones, who is on the ground near the school, is joining us now live. Kylie, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Nigel, well, we've been on the ground now for a couple minutes now, and I actually have a mom right here with me. She says her child is still in the classroom, the last she's heard. Tell me a little bit about how old is your child, and what do you know so far?
My son is 13. He's in the 7th grade, and everything happened in the 7th grade hallway. He was it happened right in front of his class. He said that right now they're protected. The teacher's protecting them. They're all still inside. They're waiting to get in the bus, but it's just scary.
And I imagine you've just been texting with him this whole time.
Yeah, my son has actually been calling him and everything because I've been so worried, and I keep asking him if he's fine, if he needs anything, just to keep him in his classroom protected in a certain place where they could know that they're protected.
I got to imagine this has got to be a mom's absolute worst nightmare.
Yes, because I just dropped him off this morning. Like I was telling other mothers, I was dropping him off in school, and I told him, I love you, have a great day. I hope you do good in your test, because they were testing. And then next thing you know is I get a call from another parent say, have you heard? And I'm like, have I heard what? They're like, there's a shooting going on in the school. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, yes, they're shooting as we speak. My son, I was talking to him, and they were shooting as we were speaking. And then her other nephew that goes here to the school calls his parent, his dad, and he was crying, telling him that there was a shooting in the school. And so I was heading to Malden, and I had to come back fast. I did not even 10 minutes to get here. Everything was already blocked, but I went through the back roads and everything to get here. They didn't let us go inside, but I was speechless. My stomach is still upset. I just want to see my son and hug him and just make sure that he's fine.
And as a mom, does it make you feel just helpless knowing he's in there?
Yes, it does. It does make me. It's like, like I said, my stomach is really upset. It just gets to me because as a parent, we know what happens in the school. They're always fighting. They're always doing something, and they don't do anything about it. And I wish they could just put like metal detectors so when your child goes in there, they can know, they're middle schoolers. They know what they're doing. So I would love for Greenville counties to do something and put metal detectors as the children. They all come through the same door. They go through the cafeteria, they do that. Why don't they put a metal detector there and then at least detect there's something there? Because supposedly they check schools. How do we know now? I don't even want to I don't want my son to come back to school no more, because it's going to be that fear of something happening else, something else is going to happen to my son. Or when I was growing up, they had metal detectors in our school when we were going into the class. And now this is going on. Now they don't take care of our kids like they used to before. And it's really scaring me, you know, as how far we've come now.
And just a couple minutes ago, we have learned that the sheriff's office says that shooter is in custody. Does that give you any, I mean, your shoulders just sighed a little bit.
Yes, it did. It just like literally just did, because we have been like, what if they come out of in the bus? And we actually, all of us are still waiting here so we can know that our kids are sitting in the bus and they're on the way over there, so we could head that way, because we knew that the shooter was still out. So we did not want to move from here because we were thinking that something might happen. He might come up and start shooting again or something. That's what we were all thinking as the mothers there. We are here waiting for our children to text us and let us know they're in the bus.
And I think you put it perfectly, and thank you so much. We are thinking of your son and all those kids in there. This mother put it perfectly, that these mothers, fathers, family members are just standing out here waiting for any sign, whether it be from their children themselves or the school. They just want to know their kids are okay. There's just a sense of commotion and chaos here right now as we see those school buses go by. Some parents say they've heard their kids are being picked up. Again, we have an extremely heavy law enforcement presence right now. The Greenville County Sheriff's Office says more than 100 deputies are surrounding the entire area around Tanglewood Middle School right now, but just an absolutely scary scene for these parents and family members who are trying to make sure their kids are okay. I'll step out of the way, give you guys another look at what we're looking at right now. Of course, school buses just lined up. If you take a look all the way down Old Easley Bridge Road, it is just school buses waiting and waiting for those kids. There are deputies all around this area, surrounding the entire area around Tanglewood Middle School, again blocking off traffic. We've been seeing traffic redirected. I know I said this a few minutes ago, but when we were pulling up here, we just saw parents running. They just got out of the car and were running, carrying their younger kids with them in tears, just trying to make sure their kids were okay. And again, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office says that student who was shot was taken to the hospital. We're working to learn how that student is doing, and we'll continue to keep you updated with live team coverage from the scene. But Nigel, Jane, I will send it back over to you guys.
Ellie, thank you. And we do want to update you too that the Greenville County Sheriff's Office is reporting that the shooter, a person, is in custody who is believed to be the shooter. I'm going to read directly from that news release that we were given. Believed to be the shooter from Tanglewood Middle School. The male suspect was located in close proximity to the school and is being described as a minor, but no further information is available at this time. Deputies are not looking for any additional suspects, so that is calming.
And seeing when Kylie was talking to that parent live, and when she told that mom that the suspect's in custody, seeing her reaction.
Yes, it's priceless.
Yeah, it
priceless.
truly is. But as Jane mentioned, the Sheriff's Office is saying that a person is in custody, believed to be the shooter, described as a minor. So obviously we will learn more about the situation or the suspect. But the good news is that deputies are not looking for any additional suspects.
And really early on, sheriffs were telling us that they believed that the shooter was also a student. So apparently they had an idea of who they were looking for early on. If you are just tuning in to us now, just shortly after 2 o'clock this afternoon, thank you for joining us. Thank you for trusting WYFF News 4. Shortly before 12:30 this afternoon, the school resource officer at Tanglewood Middle School in Greenville County called Greenville County Sheriff's Office asking for backup, saying that a student at the school had been shot and that they believed that the shooter was another student. And immediately there was a great deal of law enforcement at the school.
Yes, law enforcement basically surrounded the school, and the Greenville County Schools went into the procedure that it rehearses for over and over again. The school was basically put on lockdown, and buses began heading towards the school to get the students out of the building. Again, the suspect is in custody, but I want to read to you the statement that we received from Greenville County Schools at approximately 12:30 p.m. Greenville County Schools had reports of shots fired inside the building at Tanglewood Middle School. The school resource officer immediately responded and notified law enforcement, as Jane was just mentioning. Multiple law enforcement agencies responded. One student was transported to the hospital, and their condition is unknown at this time. We did receive notification from the hospital that, as a precaution, Greenville Memorial Hospital, the emergency department, was put on restricted access for about 30 to 45 minutes. Obviously, the hospital doing that because they had no idea how many people would be brought in to the hospital. None of us really knew how large this, none of us really knew how the number of victims that would be needed to be transported to the hospital. But we are told one person was, and for parents, this is the information you need to know. All students are being transported to Brookwood Church. I want to give you that address. That address is 580 Brookwood Point Place. This is in Simpsonville. That's where parents will be reunited with their student. Now, parents will not be able to pick up their students at Tanglewood. Parents will need to have identification in order to pick up their students, and obviously more information will be following.
And we're looking at such a large number of school buses that were lined up to transport all of these students. That's because Tanglewood has an enrollment of 779 students. You know, typically that many students would not be taking the bus every day. Some walk, some are brought by their parents, but they will all be transported out of the school by school bus only. Parents do not go to Tanglewood Middle School. As Nigel just mentioned, you can pick your student up at Brookwood Church, and we just gave that address. We'll continue to repeat that as more people join us. But they will be transporting some 779 students out of the school. Again, really impressively orderly fashion.
And we're seeing that live right here from Sky 4. The bus pulls up. You see a group of students escorted into the bus. You could see law enforcement basically surrounding where those students are walking. You could see I believe it looks like Greenville Police and the Sheriff's Office, and it looks like Highway Patrol as well. Officers there surrounding those buses as they leave. And then those buses are going to Brookwood Church, and that is a very large church.
Yes.
So that church has enough space in the parking lot for parents to be gathering. It's got enough space in the building if that's what's happening there for those reunions. And oh, Jane, those reunions with those parents and their children.
Well, we got a real sense of that from the lady that Kylie just talked to a moment ago, whose son is there. And you know, you think about that every time you say goodbye and walk out the door. She said, I kissed my son, I told him have a great day and good luck on his test, really never having any expectation that this would be the day that their student would have. There will be numbers of conversations about this tonight, but again, schools are prepared, law enforcement is prepared to, as best they can, to handle these sorts of situations. And of course, we will continue, I'm sure, as the story unfolds, to learn more about the person who is in custody and also the person who is the victim and is at Greenville Memorial Hospital right now. And
Jane, you're a mom. I'm a dad. We have kids, you know, that are in school. Like I was saying earlier, I have a kid in high school, middle school, and elementary school. My middle schooler does not go to Tanglewood, but on my way into work, I texted him, "Are you okay?" And to get that text back, "Yes, I'm fine," was a relief. And I texted my other children as well, just to get that. My wife is a teacher.
Yeah, so all of your people are in schools right now.
All of my people are in schools right now. So, but what's great is I feel good about them being in the schools right now, because the schools are a very safe place for them to be. Yes, this happens, but look at how law enforcement and the schools and the school district and the churches and the community is handling this situation.
There was a plan that was in place ahead of this, and it looks from where we sit and from our vision from Sky 4 like that plan was very well executed. We did hear again from the mom that Kylie talked to just a few moments ago that many parents are near the scene, near Tanglewood, at that Liberty Ministries church where the staging area is for law enforcement, anxiously waiting to hear a text from their student saying, "I'm okay." Look at this, very impressive. There was the students who are walking through the courtyard on their way to the front of the school where they'll get on school buses. Again, they all seem to be very orderly. Now, for those of you who might not know, middle school is 6th grade through 8th grade.
Yes.
So that's about what, 13 years old through 15 or so?
13 through 15,
13 through 16 or something.
12.
So these are students who are certainly aware enough to understand what they have gone through in these drills that they've had in school for active shooter drills, and clearly know what to do. And kudos to all of the teachers and administrators, principals and counselors for, again, inside those walls, making sure that everything stays calm.
Exactly. I do want to say, looking at the time, that it is 2:09 right now. Elementary schools are about to let out. A couple things we don't know. We don't know basically what all the elementary schools in this area are doing, or in Greenville County as a whole, because remember, so many buses are there at Tanglewood Middle School right now, moving students to Brookwood Church. So there are going to be a lot of parents out there wondering, what, will my elementary student be able to get on the bus, or how Carline will work if lockdowns are in place. So my suggestion would be to definitely check your phone, because the schools often send out an alert over the phone about kind of the procedure that is taking place at this time. But I'd imagine there are a number of parents who are calling schools, their kids' school right now, to find out how the process of dismissal is going to work.
And I'm sure that Greenville County Schools, we should be hearing from Tim Waller. If there will be anything different at your child's school, it could possibly be on the Greenville County website. We will make sure that we alert you if that's the case. And as soon as we hear from Greenville County spokesperson Tim Waller, we will alert you to that as well. They're always very good about keeping parents updated. And Nigel, as you know, as a parent with kids in school right now, they have that emergency system where they do send out parent alerts.
Yeah. We are anticipating an update from the Greenville County Sheriff in just a few minutes with an update on this situation. Again, one person, you see it there on your screen, one person is in custody after a shooting at Tanglewood Middle School. One person has been taken to the hospital. We do not know their condition at this point, but again, one person is in custody, and the spokesperson for the Greenville County Sheriff's Office says deputies are not looking for any additional suspects.
They say the suspect is a male, and he is described as a minor. So we don't know for a fact, but they had thought earlier that the suspect was a student. So the suspect is being described as a minor, and again, is in custody right now, a male. No other suspects.
We have crews at the scene. We have crews over where the parents are reunited with their students, and we have crews that will bring us the sheriff's press conference as soon as that happens. So keep it right here, and we will keep you updated on all the information as we get it.
So we talk about Tanglewood Middle School. That is in Greenville County. It's not far from the Welcome community. It's right off Highway 741, where 741 and 123 intersect. So if you're curious about what we're talking about, our Kylie Jones is at Old Easley Bridge Road and Old Dunham Bridge Road. That would probably be the most well-known intersection, if you're familiar with Greenville County, to know where Tanglewood Middle School is. If you are just joining us, you are looking at a scene from Sky 4 of Tanglewood Middle School, Greenville County, where one student has been shot in school today. The suspect is in custody. It is a male. There are no other suspects that they're looking for at this time. The male is described as a minor. And right now, the students are being evacuated. There's an enrollment of 779 students. They are being quietly and safely evacuated on school buses that are escorted by law enforcement vehicles in a very orderly conduct. They're being taken to Brookwood Church.
Jane, look at the line of buses there.
It is really incredible.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, it's sort of a logistics question for Greenville County Schools as to what happens when elementary schools get out in 15 minutes. I'm certain that we will hear. But again, Nigel, you and I both are just very impressed with the way all of this has been executed today. The plans were in place. All schools have active shooter drills with law enforcement, with all of the school administrators, teachers, faculty. Students are in on those drills, and today is a day when you're seeing all of that be put into practice. It's something that you study for, you talk about it, you plan for it, and you hope that you never have to put those plans into action. But today very clearly is an example of why you have those plans. There's no chaos involved.
And we are only about an hour and 45 minutes into this situation because according to the Greenville County School District, that initial call came in at 12:30 or around 12:30 p.m. That shots had been fired inside Tanglewood Middle School, and a school resource officer immediately responded and notified law enforcement. So we are not even 2 hours into this situation, but you could see, I mean, I was looking at Sky 4 video as I was coming in, and the amount of it had to be over 100 officers around the school as they were figuring out what the situation was at the school. And once they got the suspect in custody and they knew the situation and the victim was transported to the hospital, getting the students out of the school became the top priority and reuniting them with their parents. And we see that happening, the students leaving the school happening live right here from Sky 4, which is in the air over Tanglewood Middle School.
And you mentioned over 100 law enforcement. Greenville County Sheriff's Office told us that they have a presence of more than 100 law enforcement officers. So then we've also seen cars from the City of Greenville Police Department and also from South Carolina Highway Patrol. And Kylie has mentioned too that there were plenty of fire departments on the scene as well. So there's great presence of emergency management, emergency vehicles on standby, and certainly a great presence of law enforcement on the scene there, making parents and students feel a great deal safer.
And getting more than 700, almost 800 students out of a school is not an easy task. And they're going to have to go room by room and area by area. And as Kylie was talking to a parent live just moments ago, that parent said that her 7th grader was still in the classroom, and that parent was saying that her child told her that it happened in the 7th grade hallway, and he heard it. So not only is that going to be important for parents to reunite with their students, but there are going to be so many questions.
Right, those will be sounds that student will hear in his head for a very long time.
Exactly, and every student, at the sound of my voice, they're going to be wondering, could this happen?
Right.
Again.
Right.
So it is going to be a night of tight hugs for a lot of people. And just, you know.
Certainly one thing that is making the evacuation of the school much easier for law enforcement is that law enforcement believes that there are no other suspects.
Exactly.
If you're trying to evacuate and you're not sure who the suspects are or if there are more, that certainly is a huge complication.
Yeah, so we are going to have a press conference from the Greenville County Sheriff's Office in about 5 to 10 minutes. We are monitoring that situation, and as soon as that press conference starts, we will let you know.
And the buses are beginning to arrive right now at Brookwood Church. We have received a statement from Greenville County Schools spokesperson Tim Waller, who is telling us that all of these buses are heading to Brookwood Church. Please do not go there if you do not have a student to pick up. But if you are the parent or guardian of a student, you can be reunited with your student at Brookwood. That address is 580 Brookwood Point Place, Simpsonville, South Carolina. Parents, when you get there, you will need to make sure that you have photo identification so that you can pick up your student. As Greenville County Schools has more information to share, we will hear more from them. But again, impressive pictures that we see here from Sky 4 of the students very calmly in a very orderly fashion getting to these buses so that they can get to Brookwood. And again, buses are beginning to arrive now at Brookwood Church in Simpsonville.
And so many buses in the school district are obviously taking care of this situation here. Meanwhile, elementary schools around the district are scheduled to be letting out very soon. So parents should contact their school or check their messages to make sure that if a situation at their child's elementary school for dismissal is different, that they are notified. We did just get an update from the Greenville County School District. I'm going to read it as an update. Law enforcement has confirmed that the suspect is in custody. They are not looking for any additional suspects. We mentioned that. We are told from the Greenville County School District that the building has been secured and students are safely being transported to Brookwood Church. Again, that presser from the Greenville County Sheriff is just moments away, but I want to give you that address where students from Tanglewood Middle are reunited is 508 Brookwood Point Place. We're going to talk to the sheriff.
It came from the school resource officer that works this school. He called for emergency assistance, so there was obviously a lot of activity here. We have a little more than 200 law enforcement officials that arrived on scene, as well as district officials. You see these buses lined up here, evacuating students and moving them to a different location, as well as the staff. The school has been cleared. We did confirm there was a shooting. The victim was transported to the hospital. I don't have any information to release about the victim, but it was a teenage student. We do have a shooter in custody who is another teenage student that was found off-site from the school. The shooting occurred. The student immediately left the school. We found out sometime later. Now we've secured the school again and evacuating students and staff, making sure their needs are taken care of. We have had it's been a very trying situation for sure. Our heart goes out to the family, all the families involved. We certainly ask that you pray for the family of the victim. For sure, as information develops about his status, but also the children at the school. It's a very traumatic time for them. So please keep them and their families in your thoughts and prayers. One thing I will highlight is you absolutely have the best law enforcement anybody could have. You have our county deputies, obviously, the city police department. Chief Thompson sent numerous officers over here. The State Law Enforcement Division has officers over here. The ATF, FBI, DEA, school officers who work school security showed up over here. All those people converged on this scene to secure it very quickly. If y'all were here and able to kind of watch that take place. Dr. Worcester was out here immediately with his staff, assessing the situation, making provisions, again, to evacuate the school. This is a terrible, terrible situation. But the response from the men and women who serve this community is incredible, and my hat's off to them. They're the ones that put in the work. EMS, getting the victim out and rendering aid to him as we arrived, it's just incredible. And they have worked very hard, certainly, to provide a very safe school environment for these children. So my hat's off to them. It was very impressive for sure, but there are some very highly skilled individuals who work here. So before we take any questions, and keep in mind there's some things we're not going to be able to tell you. You know what they are probably, so if you want to ask that question, that's fine, but some we won't be able to answer. Dr. Worcester is here. Doc, do you want to make a statement, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Sheriff. Very much to echo some of the things that Sheriff Lewis has shared with you. First, certainly our prayers for those affected by this tragedy, the victim, but all the students in that school, the families, anybody that was in some way impacted by this kind of traumatic event. I also want to echo what Sheriff Lewis said. We could not have had a better, a more rapid, a more professional, or a more in accordance with plan response by every agency and every entity that responded to this situation. Starting at the school level, the school responded quickly. They responded in accord with our emergency plans. The law enforcement response was, in essence, immediately, as Sheriff Lewis indicated, part of the SRO in the school, and supported by several hundred officers from a number of different agencies, as he indicated to you. This is as I think we would all look at this, it's a senseless tragedy, and unfortunately one that occurs all too often in today's society, where people perhaps resort to violence, and it has a lasting impact on all those that are in proximity to it. But again, we extend our appreciation to all of those that have worked so hard to ensure that our students were led to safety, that they were sheltered in place, that the building, the grounds, the individuals were properly searched, screened before they were placed on buses. You see some of these buses lined up here. In accordance with our protocol, we will empty the entire building, faculty, staff, and students. They will be transported to one of our relocation sites that we have previously established in our emergency plan, in this case, Brookwood Church. So we would direct all parents to Brookwood Church. We have people already in place there to assist with the orderly and logged dismissal of those students to their parent or guardian. In fact, a message has already been sent to all of the parents in the school to give that information directly to them. Each of those parents should have received that at their emergency contact number at this point. Again, my appreciation to Sheriff Lewis and to all the individuals, both in the school district, and the various law enforcement and EMS agencies that responded to this situation.
And Sheriff and Superintendent, the fact that this happened in a middle school, these students were at school, the shooter was a student, the victim was a student, how does this highlight the severity of the situation? And I know, Superintendent, you said this happens far too often.
I don't think it's, at this point, something that any of us could comment on why we believed it took place. And I'm not sure, even after a full and thorough law enforcement investigation, anyone will really know what was going through the mind of that young person that took this rash act. So I don't know there's anyone will ever know except that person, and they may not be able to articulate it for you.
How and when were parents first notified about this earlier? Some parents said they didn't get any kind of emergency alert.
Well, the first responsibility of the school and the district is to ensure that everyone within the walls of that school are safe, they're in shelter, and that we can proceed in accordance with our plan. As soon as we know that, we then immediately begin to communicate to parents what has happened and what the first step will be in that process. And that is going to take, even though the police response was almost immediate, that's going to take a while to discern enough information to properly inform people. Doesn't do any good to inform them if you don't have good information to give to them, even if the first information is minimal in nature.
There are a lot of buses here. Is this going to affect the pickup of other kids throughout the district?
It will. Obviously, our first priority is we've put between 25 and 40 buses at this location, because unlike a regular day, they're transporting every student in that school, not just the bus riders, and every faculty and staff member in that school. So it will delay buses throughout the district likely, and those schools that are affected have been notified.
What can you tell children and their
officer on scene? Can you respond at all to this?
Yes, I'll defer to Sheriff Lewis.
I think I started my statement with the fact that that's exactly who called for emergency assistance. The deputy was there. I can't talk too much right now about kind of what led up to that, but he's the one that notified other officers via the radio, hey, I need emergency assistance. I've heard a gunshot. They locked down the school. Again, can't comment enough about the staff at Tanglewood Middle School. When they isolated those kids, everybody went to where they're supposed to be. We've conducted lockdown drills with the school district in the past several months, and people kind of call and question and complain why we do those things. Unfortunately, we had to use that, and the students and the staff, it worked seamlessly. When we arrived at the school, Again, we didn't have to deal with kids running everywhere and staff. Everybody was where they were supposed to be. Our priority was obviously rendering aid to the victim and looking for the suspect. That started right away.
Are there any metal detectors at that school? Any other security issues or devices that the school uses to utilize on the?
There is some security features in place at the school, but not metal detectors, and we won't go too deep into what each school has.
What can you let children and their families know tonight so they can hopefully sleep peacefully and come into school tomorrow and be safe and learn?
Again, the suspect's in custody. We can't elaborate a whole lot on that, so there's not a danger to the community at all. Unfortunately, these are two young men that attended school here. We don't really know the specifics of why it occurred and why so many young people resort to violence, especially with firearms. Again, tragic situation, but certainly I would not hesitate if my child went to school here to send them to school here in the morning. Again, everybody was very well prepared at the school. The district's done a great job with that, and you would really have to see that. How that worked out to really appreciate it. My hat's off again to the folks at Tanglewood. They did a great job protecting people's kids.
Can you tell us where it happened in the school?
It was in the front part of the school.
Was it in a classroom? Was it in a hallway cafeteria?
It was in the front part of the school.
Will there be school tomorrow?
We haven't made any decision about school for Tanglewood tomorrow. We made that decision later this afternoon, and we'll announce it at the time we make it.
Are any of your security policies going to be in review? He asked about metal detectors. Is that something you would consider in the future?
Any time, not only when we have an incident in one of our schools, but when the incidents occur throughout the country, we immediately, following the incident, when we have a point where we've got enough information to do so, we debrief on what procedures we have, were the procedures followed. In this case, it appears that cursory review, seeing how everything came together and as quickly as it came together, the situation that was in place when I got there, appears to me they followed every procedure we have in place. That doesn't mean we won't look at that, see if something could have been done better or if something needs to be changed. And again, we do that even when incidents occur in other places. And we do that as a group. So it would be school-level personnel, district administration, district security personnel, law enforcement personnel. We're extremely fortunate in Greenville, have an excellent relationship with all of our law enforcement agencies, but especially the sheriff's office, where there is a unit of the sheriff's office assigned directly to the school district. They will all be involved in debriefing this incident to see what might we learn from it that could cause us to increase or enhance our safety protocols.
Were these students
studied these in other places? What's unique about America that brings these a lot more common than other countries?
I don't know that anybody has the answer to how we've arrived at a point where all of us tend to say, the media, people involved in it, I think people in law enforcement as well, that this is happening all too often. I don't think that any one person seems to hold the solution to that. I would imagine if they did, we'd be working on that solution. I think there are an awful lot of factors that may be at play here.
Sheriff, are you able to say, is there a relationship between the two students, friends, or were they just in the same school?
We don't know anything other than the fact they go to school together. We don't have any information that would lead us to believe otherwise.
What grade, do you know?
I don't, no ma'am.
Are you able to say how close to the school the suspected shooter was found? Was it right outside or in a car?
He's very close proximity to the school.
Can you say the condition at all of the victim? Any idea?
I don't know right now, to be honest. I'm sure we'll be releasing something shortly to all of you, but I know my phones went off several times talking to y'all, but I haven't looked at it yet. So.
Did the suspect surrender?
No, deputies found him, located him. I mean, he certainly at that point gave himself up. He was hiding. Again, he's a young man. Probably didn't understand the consequences of what had just occurred and the severity of it, and certainly didn't know the status of the victim. I don't think he knew what to do, honestly, except leave the school, the area where it happened. So he was apprehended. We have not questioned him at all yet. He's a juvenile, so there's some protocol that has to be followed there. And again, like Dr. Royster said, there's a wide search going on inside the school to make sure there's no weapons there. There's still a crime scene there that has to be protected. So it's still a very active investigation. We just wanted to give y'all some information to give to the public.
Will you be talking to the parents of the shooter about possibly where he got the gun and how he got the gun into the school? I mean, is there possibilities that parents could face some charges as well?
It's certainly very early to say anything about that because we don't know, but that's certainly part of this investigation.
Sheriff, what kind of weapon or what kind of gun was used?
We won't comment on any of that at this time. One more question. Anybody? Thank you.
With the school, do y'all have like history of statistics of like violence in the area with the school? Is that comparative to other schools around the area? Do y'all have that information?
We track incidents by school on a literally a daily basis. We compile a report annually of that, so we have all the information. Obviously, I don't have that with me today. But all those things, South Carolina, there is a reporting requirement for that, so that's reported by every school district to the State Department of Education on an annual basis. So that information is available publicly, literally for every school district in the state of South Carolina.
And with that information, does this school have a higher rate of violence in that terms or no?
I couldn't speak to that without having the numbers in front of me.
Just to confirm, no one else was injured at all in this? No school resources, other students? Any other words for the students or parents, though, who are very shaken up right now?
Well, I think one of the most important things is make sure that they give the school the right contact information and very updated contact information. You see how quickly this happened. They're sending out messages to let parents know, and we have people pull up and say, hey, what's going on? I didn't know anything about it. Most of the time, that's your own fault. If my kids go to school and they're in the custody or care of somebody else, I'm going to make sure they got my contact information. So my suggestion is, as a parent or grandparent or a custodian of a child that goes to school, call and make sure that school has the right information. That way there's no question. They sent out a message very quickly that gave very specific directions on where to go, when to be there, and what we were doing. I know this is a traumatic situation, but there's not a reason for a parent to come to this school because your child's not here. And we want you to go get your child. And they told them, bring identification, make sure we know, who you're coming to get. All those things are being worked out, obviously, at the other location. But, you got to have a plan. And if you don't give us the right information, don't give the district the right information, what can we do? All we can do is call the number we have or email the email address we have. And so many people change those things, that's probably going to be some of the issues people run into. And I'd be frustrated too, but it's my fault if I don't give that information up. So the district done a great job of getting the message out very early on. We were inside the school when that was occurring. When Dr. Royster, we were standing there when that was, all playing out. So hats off to the principal and his staff. Again, our deputy, our SRO at the school did a tremendous job. I'm telling you, a heroic job, as well as everybody who responded. We didn't know what we had, but they shut this place down very early and went to work. And I couldn't be more humbled, really, to work with such a great group of people in this community.
As a follow-up to your question about the trauma, as a part of our response, our emergency response plan, we have an aftercare, what's called an aftercare team. Mental health specialists, school counselors, psychologists that are employed by the district, all that are trauma trained. That team would be the team that would respond, say at a school where sometimes we have a child killed in a car accident or something. They would respond to the school. In the case of an incident like this, they're part of the response to the reunification site. So when those students begin arriving there by bus at Brookwood, there will be psychologists, counselors, mental health specialists on site at Brookwood to help them, to be with them, to help them through this up until their parents come, and even after their parents arrive there if they need the services of that individual. And that's simply part of our emergency response plan.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time now is 2:37, and we were just watching a press conference with Greenville County Sheriff Hobart Lewis and the Greenville County Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Burke Royster. A lot of information there, Jane.
And, you know, Sheriff Lewis spoke first, Nigel, and he really echoed some of the things that you and I observed as we see this scene unfolding on Sky 4, and that is that the response was really immediate to this incident, that all of those protocols that they had in place were enacted, that the school was locked down quickly, the students were assured of safety, and they cleared the school very quickly. Sheriff Hobart Lewis saying over 200 law enforcement on the scene quickly to clear the school, and indeed it was a teenage student that's in custody. Also referred to the student who was in the hospital who was shot as he, him. And then he said later 2 male students involved. He said that the sled was there, officers from the FBI, DEA, school officers, all converged on the scene, in addition to Greenville City Police and also sheriff's officers.
So before we take you out live to Brookwood, let's just recap really quick of what happened. Approximately at 12:30 p.m., Greenville County Schools have reports of shots fired inside the building at Tanglewood Middle School. The school resource officer immediately responded, notified law enforcement. Law enforcement agencies responded. 1 student was transported to the hospital. Their condition is not known at this time. Another student, as the sheriff told us, was found near the school, gave himself up, is now in custody, and right now we are watching as Sky 4 is over Brookwood Church, how the school district is transporting students from the school to Brookwood Church to be reunited with their parents.
And Dr. Royster saying there that there are some 25 to 40 Greenville County school buses that are being used to do that. He did confirm that that will affect other schools that are being let out right now, elementary schools being let out now. But if your child is affected by that, you will get a notification from Greenville County Schools. So now we are looking at Brookwood Church. Now, keep in mind that Tanglewood is sort of on the west side of Greenville, on the western part of the city of Greenville. They were taken to Brookwood Church, which is down in the sort of more southern part, still in Greenville County, in Simpsonville. And Dr. Burke Royster saying too that as part of the emergency response plan in a situation like this, that at this location where students are being brought, where they will meet with their parents or guardians to be picked up, part of the response includes an aftercare team. So there will be personnel who are trained, trauma trained. They're part of that response, psychologists, counselors, mental health personnel right here at the school right now to speak with these students, to speak with parents. Of course, that will be an ongoing situation. But that is one of the things happening at Brookwood as parents go to pick their students up.
And we have a crew at Brookwood right now. Let's go live to Rashad Williams, who is live there at the scene at Brookwood Church, where parents are being reunited with their students. Rashad.
Yeah, Nigel, Jane, you guys have reiterated the point of law enforcement and their response. I've got to say, I haven't been here long at the church, but the way law enforcement has this order, our parents are able to come in. They're directed to exactly where they need to go. And I'm standing right behind the buses as well as students are being unloaded. I'm sure you can see that from the view of Sky 4. Something else I noticed when I got here is that all the buses that I've seen, which is probably well over a dozen, were all brought in with law enforcement escorts. Again, they were escorted to the church, I guess to ensure their safety, but they were escorted here as students have been unloading off of the buses. I'm not sure if you can see the front of the church. Again, I'm standing near the front, but there's a heavy law enforcement presence here as well, again, as students exit the bus and go into the church. So what I'm going to work to do is to try to locate some parents and find the reunification, again, as students are brought here safely. Everything seems to be very calm. Again, everything is in order. We have 2 more buses rolling in right now, again, escorted by police, and they're being directed on where to go exactly. So, again, everything is orderly. The students that I've seen seem to be calm, seem to be okay. Law enforcement, they seem to be calm, and they seem to have everything under control. So I definitely think that helps the students in this situation when they see those that are here to help them, that they're calm and they're letting the students know that they're here to help. So again, we've got another live view. Students are getting off one of the buses parked in front of Brookwood Church. And just to reiterate, parents will be reunited with their students here. Parents will not be able to pick up their students at Tanglewood. As you all have mentioned, parents will need to have identification once you get here at Brookwood Church in order to pick up their student. The address for Brookwood Church is 580 Brookwood Point Place, Simpsonville. Again, it's 580 Brookwood Point Place, Simpsonville. We're continuing to see students and staff getting off the buses, heading inside of the church. But for now, again, I'm going to work to try to get some more information on what's going on here as far as parents being able to pick up their students at exact location. So I'll suspect you for now.
Rashad, thank you very much for that information. And Jane, you know, Rashad raised a great point, and I thought that's what was happening when Sky 4 was over Tanglewood, but there was a line of buses, and then I saw whether it be Greenville Police or Greenville County Sheriffs or Highway Patrol, but a officer escorting what I thought was escorting the bus.
Right, no, it looked like that.
So imagine for those kids who were just in that school and know the situation that played out. All those officers surrounded the school. There's that comfort, I would imagine many students had, seeing the officers at the school, but then they got to get on a bus and then go down the road. By having an officer escort that bus, imagine what that will do for the children and for the parents at Brookwood, seeing a bus come in escorted by law enforcement.
Absolutely, because in a situation like that too, you always say, what else, right? We've just heard these shots in the hallway. I've just heard that a classmate has been shot, believed possibly by another classmate. What else? And that presence of law enforcement, as we saw law enforcement flanking the sides of the sidewalk as the students walked through to get on those buses, all very, very important. And as you said, very important here as you're looking at Brookwood Church. This is in Simpsonville, South Carolina, where you're looking right now. Rashad reports that there is also that same heavy law enforcement presence there. And again, Sheriff Hobart Lewis, Greenville County Sheriff, in his news conference just a few moments ago, just could not compliment law enforcement enough in terms of the planned response, he said, that started at the school level all the way through the law enforcement response. Hundreds of law enforcement personnel from many different agencies going to the scene. All of that made all of the difference in the world. Now that doesn't, I'm sure that the hearts of those parents are still beating hard. Our Kylie Jones has spoken with a couple of the parents who first went to Tanglewood. They just needed to be near the school, they told her, because they were hoping to get a text from their student. We see a student here running.
We've been watching Sky 4's over the scene, just parent or guardian escorting their children. So that reunion had happened in the building. And Jane, while you were talking, I saw what appeared to be a mother and a father walking out with their child. And right when they got in the parking lot, the man put his arm around the little boy. And oh, my heart, just seeing that from the Sky 4 video.
Well, you've got three sons that are in Greenville County schools right this minute. Absolutely. But it's an incredibly emotional thing. This is just not something, and many of the media people that were there at the news conference kept asking the sheriff and also school superintendent Dr. Royster, you know, how do you explain this? There is no explanation. There is no explanation as to why anyone, but certainly a child of this age, would bring a gun to school and shoot another student. And then Sheriff Lewis, when asked if the student, if the young juvenile in custody gave himself up when he saw deputies, he was hiding somewhere just off school grounds. The sheriff really seemed to be very sympathetic. He said, you know, he's a very young man. He said he was hiding when deputies found him. He's a very young man. And the sheriff said, I don't think he knew what to do. And so it just always begs the question, does he even know what he did? So explaining all of this is very difficult, but yes, great comfort and just being able to be in the parent's arms or in the arms of the guardian or the person that's protecting you.
I believe we have our Kylie Jones near this scene right here at Brookwood Church. Can we go to Kylie live right now?
Or she's still at the staging area.
We may not have Kylie right now. So, but I do want to say, so the time now is 2:46. So the situation right now, there's a couple of situations playing out. First at the school. Sheriff Hobart Lewis said that right now the school is a crime scene. So as they are evacuating students, staff, and faculty from the school, they have to search that entire building, every corner, every cubby, every part of that building needs to be searched for any evidence, any weapons, anything. So that is going to be taking place now and throughout the evening and probably into tomorrow. They have to search the entire building and the grounds. Again, the time is 2:47. Every school in Greenville County School District is going to be letting out within the next hour, because high schools, I believe, let out at around 3:40, 3:45, and middle schools are around 3:15. And I'm just trying to remember this off the top of my head. So within the next hour, every school will be letting out. But here's the situation. So many buses are dealing with this situation at Tanglewood Middle School right now. So there will be delays. As the superintendent of Greenville County Schools, Brooke Royster, just said, there will be delays, possible delays at some schools. So parents at others who have children at other schools, just be prepared for that possibility.
Exactly. The sheriff did say that they are evacuating, as again, this is part of the protocol, the emergency protocol. Law enforcement has to evacuate every single person who is in that school. Tanglewood has an enrollment of over 770 students. Then add to that the staff and the faculty. And they, as part of protocol, will take all of those people here to Brookwood Church that you're seeing here live from Sky 4, and then they will be debriefed, and each student, before they leave, they have to check the ID of the student and the ID of the parent or the guardian to make certain that that student is leaving with the appropriate person. So all of that takes a long time too. And they said that takes anywhere from 25 to 40 buses just to get all of those people out of there. But again, if your child's school is affected by this bus situation, you were notified by Greenville County Schools.
Yep. As for Tanglewood Middle School, Dr. Brooke Royster says as of right now, they don't know what will happen at school tomorrow, in the sense of, will there be school, or will there be a day, because this investigation still taking place, that students don't go. So we don't have that information yet. As soon as we get that information, we will let you know. And of course, that's just for parents who have children at Tanglewood Middle, and for students at Tanglewood and their staff as well.
And the sheriff said something too that really bears repeating here. He said, it is important to be sure that your child's school has the right contact information for you. That way, in the event of something like this, you know that you're going to hear directly from the school district. And again, Nigel and I both know, having had children, having had or have children in Greenville County Schools, they have an excellent emergency system in order to contact parents. But the sheriff says that's all out the window if your child's school doesn't have the right emergency contact for you. So that's important. Whether you're part of Greenville County Schools or anybody else listening to us in our viewing area, please make sure that your information is up to date with your child's school. That way you're not left out in the cold and asking what's going on. I thought it was interesting too that the sheriff used the word heroic. He said it was a heroic job by the principal and by the school SRO and by all of the people who were involved in this.
The way he described it is that no one missed a beat, from the school resource officer immediately hearing the shots and calling, and then everything that played out, which we will definitely learn as time goes on. But he's basically said no one missed a beat, and the superintendent agreed.
Absolutely. Let's go to Kylie Jones now and see what she's learning on the ground. Kylie?
Yeah, and Jane, you guys just heard that press conference from Sheriff Hobart Lewis and Superintendent Brooke Royster, just talking about, Sheriff Lewis really touted the work of his more than 200 deputies, he said, were on the scene. He said it was them who contained the situation, got things under control, got that student who was shot to the hospital, and ultimately got that shooter into custody. Now, the sheriff could not share too many details about the actual incident, but he did let us know that both of those students, the victim and the shooter, were both two young men. They could not give us the the ages of those children. However, they, of course, are in middle school, as we know. And Sheriff Lewis said the shooter shot that student in the front part of the school. He could not confirm whether that was in a classroom, a lobby, somewhere else, but he said it was in the front part of the school. He said the shooter was eventually found by deputies and taken into custody and arrested very close to the school. And things have cleared out quite a bit since we last talked to you. Right here again, this is on Old Easley Bridge Road near Old Dunham Bridge Road. I'll give you a look down the street. You can still see some school buses. Those buses are waiting to get to the school. You can also see just a line of law enforcement cars. We've got Greenville Police, we've got Greenville County EMS. Of course, we know the Greenville Sheriff's Office is the lead on this investigation and this incident, but there you see some more law enforcement cars headed that way towards Tanglewood Middle School. Again, just a little while ago, we had a line of buses all the way down Old Easley Bridge Road. Thankfully, that has cleared out just a little bit, but we have a lot of law enforcement officers still on the scene. Of course, a lot of parents were really milling around, gathering in this area. They were trying to learn more information about what exactly was going on. If you were with us a little while ago earlier today, you saw we talked to one mom, and she said she was actually texting and calling her son while he was in the classroom in Tanglewood, and he said he heard gunshots. And again, just an awfully scary situation for anyone, never mind middle schoolers. And now Superintendent Burke Royster did address school tomorrow for Tanglewood Middle School. He said it's unclear whether Tanglewood Middle School will be in class tomorrow. He said that decision will come a little bit later today. They have to discuss that. He did point to a number of trauma-trained teachers and other staff members at the school. He said those teachers and staff are specially trained to deal with situations like this and work with those students, especially young students. And as you can see, more school buses are still passing us, coming this way. Again, this is Old Easley Bridge Road near Old Dunham Bridge Road, and things have quieted down quite a bit. But again, we talked to some parents who this, of course, is just their absolute worst nightmare, and they say they are just hoping that their children are safe. But as for those children who will have to go to school after this, just an awfully scary situation. But we will continue to bring you some live updates from here, and team coverage throughout the day will be live here later this evening. For now, Jane and Nigel, I'll send it back over to you guys.
Kylie, thank you very much.
And Kylie, before you go, can you still hear me?
Yes, Jane, I'm with you.
Already, there were some parents that were gathered there at the staging area near Tanglewood Middle School when we first came to you. Are they still there, or have they now headed off to Brookwood Church, or have they left? Do you see more parents still there?
And we'll actually give you a look. It was down this way. Again, you can see some more law enforcement. It is cleared out quite a bit down that way, too. That's where a lot of those clusters of parents were gathering. That's where we talked to some. You can see they are off to get their children right now, and hopefully will be safely reunited with them. Again, Sheriff Lewis did point out to make sure for parents that your correct contact information is listed at your children's schools, so there isn't that confusion and you can figure out where to safely pick them up. But again, I think for most parents, they are just so glad to hear that that shooter has been arrested and is in custody. And Sheriff Lewis says they haven't even gotten a chance to talk to that student yet, but they will hopefully do that. And, you know, Sheriff Lewis said it's hard to tell, you know, why that happened. And Superintendent Royster said they may never know why this happened, but they say that it was really the work of their, again, more than 200 deputies. And he listed a laundry list of other agencies that responded to this incident, and he said it was because of their work and that SRO inside Tanglewood Middle School who contained this situation and kept it from ending even worse. But yeah, Jane and Nigel will continue to keep you updated here.
Great, Kylie, thank you. And when Kylie had talked to a mom there about an hour ago, the mom was just saying how anxious she was to just get a text from her student. So it's good to know that the parents who had kind of gathered around the school as close as they could get have now left and are on the way to Brookwood to pick up their students. And that's exactly what you're looking at now, Sky 4, above Brookwood Church. This is in Simpsonville, not far from 385. And the parents are going to to claim their children, and one by one, part of the plan, part of this emergency plan, is that parents or guardians have to show ID, and they have to prove that this is their child, and then they are released one by one. It's not a mass exodus out of there.
Yeah, and here's the situation. The suspect may be in custody, but this situation is far from over.
Yes.
Every single one of these students, faculty and staff, they are going to have to deal with the trauma and coming to terms in your mind with what just happened and how close it happened to them. So the district has psychologists and counselors already there at the church, at this area where you're looking at right now, where the reunions are taking place, to help any student, staff, or really anyone who just needs to talk.
Yeah, and again, that's great to know that that is part of the plan, that they understand that the mental health and the emotional security and stability of these students is secondary, but almost as important as their physical security. The sheriff was very clear in saying that their number one objective when law enforcement gets to the scene is to secure the scene and to make sure that there is physical safety for all of the students and the people inside that school. The school district also has these plans in place where they have mental health personnel, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors on hand to talk to the students and their parents right now, immediately, when it's all still very fresh and exceptionally confusing. Part of the protocol, according to the sheriff, first, empty the entire building, then take the students and all faculty to a secure location. So that's the part of the plan that you're looking at now here at almost 3 o'clock at Brookwood Church in Simpsonville. And then an orderly and logged dismissal. So as they dismiss these students and faculty, each person's name is taken off the list.
Yeah, searched and screened is exactly what the sheriff said.
And so that's what they're doing at the school right now. They're screening and searching every quarter because, again, we don't know. The question was asked in the news conference of the sheriff, how did the student get the weapon into the school? What kind of gun was it, et cetera? He said, I can't really talk about that right now, but you never know if it didn't necessarily happen today that the weapon got into the school. So it's very important for law enforcement.
Because we're talking about a middle schooler.
Absolutely. So it's very important that law enforcement make sure that there are no weapons hidden inside the school somewhere before they can return safely at some point.
The time now is just shy of 3 o'clock. Let's recap exactly what has taken place today. At around 12:30 p.m., Greenville County Schools had reports of shots fired inside the building at Tanglewood Middle School. The school resource officer immediately responded and notified law enforcement. Multiple law enforcement agencies responded to the scene. One student, a young man, was transported to the hospital. Their condition is not known at this time. Another student, a young man, is in custody. That young man, according to the Greenville County Sheriff, says that young man was found near the school. As for how all that played out, we do not know as of yet, but we do know that suspect, that young man, is in custody, and I believe he said a student at the school as well.
He did, and a juvenile.
Yeah, and a juvenile. So all the students are being transported to Brookwood Church, and that is what you are seeing here on your television right now. Sky 4 above Brookwood Church, where the students are being taken by bus from the school to the church by police escort. They are being reunited with their parents. So any parents or guardians who need to pick up their child because they go to Tanglewood Middle, you need to have identification with you in order to pick up your students.
Very important to note. And in the middle of all of that, Nigel, Greenville Memorial Hospital reports that they were on restricted access for a period of about 45 minutes. That's because that's where the student was taken. And so they were put on restricted access, but they were back open after about 45 minutes. Again, all of this unfolding just before 12:30 this afternoon.
Yeah, and we watched Sky 4 of the scene as initially, as this began, the amount of law enforcement that surrounded Tanglewood Middle. Obviously, those officers, knowing that shots were reported being fired, knowing that they have a victim, but not knowing what was going to happen inside. what was happening inside. So the amount of officers that arrived and surrounded that school to make sure the staff, the faculty, and of course those students are kept safe. Hundreds.
That's what the sheriff said, hundreds.
Yeah.
And we saw a great big presence of Greenville County Sheriff's officers. We saw Greenville Police. We saw South Carolina Highway Patrol. But the sheriff also said that immediately acting were SLED officers, FBI, DEA, and school resource officers. Let's go to Taggart Houck. Taggart Houck is near Tanglewood Middle School on the ground for us. Taggart, what are you seeing from your perspective?
Hey, Jane. Yeah, well, I just want to give you an idea of what we are seeing right now. Before, I would say about 5 to 10 minutes ago, we're going to show you just this side of the street right here. This whole area of the street was lined with school buses. In fact, it actually stretched further down to where I am now. That has since cleared within the last 5 minutes. We have also seen some law enforcement vehicles headed the opposite direction from the school, out closer to White Horse Road area. But you can see just a steady stream of cars. These appear in some ways to probably be folks who live nearby this area. You did talk about the student pickup, right? Those students in Simpsonville at Brookwood Church. I will tell you that we have spoken with some parents and guardians in this area, and there has been some concern expressed by them about actually getting those children. For one, some of them say they don't have the transportation needs to get there. There was also a note about showing identification to pick up the students at that location as well. So those are some of the concerns that we're hearing on the ground, at least in this section of this area right now. I just want to step off. We'll give you just another look at what you're seeing, the road opening, essentially back up. It seems you've got these cars coming through. I can't express to you just how much of a law enforcement scene this was really as recent as 20 minutes ago. We have seen some movement after that press conference with Greenville County Sheriff Hobart Lewis, Greenville County School Superintendent Dr. Brooke Royster. That is when we started to see things clear out a bit. I should note, Kylie talked about this as well. The sheriff certainly praising the effort of first responders and law enforcement to get there. Also praising the actions by this school resource officer. Again, I know a lot of people want to know a lot of the details, the fine details as to what happened here. The sheriff saying it is better to be safe at this point and just release the details that they can talk about. From that, we know that there was a male student apprehended. The sheriff telling us that they could not question that student as of yet. He said there are certain procedures that they have to go through. It's not entirely clear when that questioning will take place. We also have been telling folks that one student was taken to the hospital. But again, just to come back to this, the big point now is the transportation idea here. These students at Brookwood Church, you can imagine there are a good number of buses that have been dedicated to getting those students there. And as a result of that, you are going to see in some schools around the district at least probably an altered, if not delayed, pickup for those students. Dr. Burke Royster, the Greenville County School Superintendent, said that about 25 to 40 buses were used in getting these students out of Tanglewood Middle School. That means for select schools within the district, he says, there will probably be a little bit of a different pattern, probably a little bit of a delay in some cases for students getting them back from the schools. And he said those affected schools have been notified. Again, I just want to reiterate some of the finer details here. Not entirely clear as of yet, but the sheriff did tell us today that what happened took part in the front part of the school. And what we're working to do now is we, learn this more information from officials. We're working to talk with some of the parents who are nearby, what they are saying. I can tell you that there was a guardian of 2 students within Tanglewood Middle School. We spoke with her on camera about 10 minutes ago. She was telling us that, again, we talk about parents being able to make it out to Brookwood. She was telling us that she had some concerns about getting to her students in the first place, specifically when it came to transportation. She says she cannot drive. So there are some of those concerns floating around, given the fact that, this is now going to be in Simpsonville for these students where that pickup is. So for some of the parents in this area, that is a little bit of a further drive, certainly, than what they would be used to making around this area. But again, important to note here, I can't tell you what is happening at the end of this road, but I can tell you that we have seen traffic pick up a bit more kind of spontaneously with cars that are not law enforcement vehicles, cars that probably are belonging to neighbors around here, but we can't say that for sure. But again, clearing up, and we're going to continue to give you some updates as we get them from these officials and what we are hearing from parents. But for now, in Greenville County, Taggart Hauk, WYFF News 4, we're going to send it right back to the studio.
Taggart, thank you very much.
Thank you, and very good point, Taggart, on that there being a 15-mile difference between Tanglewood and Brookwood, and there's really not public transportation to get you there.
And at Brookwood is where we find our Rashad Williams, who is there as the students and parents are reuniting. Rashad.
Well, I'm here at Brookwood Church. I'm on the backside now, and you can see directly behind me. This is where parents are coming out after being reunified with their students. We're going to walk over here now. I've got Miss Angela and Miss Prentasia with me right now. So first things first, I got to ask you, how does it feel to be able to hug your daughter?
Feels good. A burden been lifted up off of me. It feels real good.
And can you walk me through, where were you exactly when either you got the call or when you were able to see what was going on?
I had a meeting at my daughter Prentasia's school at 12:30, but I got there a little early. And when I got there, I was getting out. The police told me, get back, you can't come in, you can't come in. I'm like, what's wrong? He never would tell me. He said, get back in your car. So when I was getting in my car, all the police came. I know every police in Greenville County was there, and ambulance. They running in with guns, not handguns, but rifles with the scope on them. All in the building. They wouldn't let me leave. I had to stay on side the road till all the ambulance and stuff get up there, and then once that happened, they told me I can go. And I've been waiting here for my daughter right here, Prentasia Calhoun, and I'm like, I need to talk to her, I need to know what's going on. And they were saying, you can get them at whatever this is, and I said, okay. So we've been waiting, but my daughter right here, she was on the floor where it happened at, and she can tell you what she saw. So.
All right, so you just described to me, you painted the picture for the outside of the building. You were there as everything was unfolding, and Ms. Prentasia, what grade are you in?
I'm in 7th grade.
And you said you were inside as everything was unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
And can you walk me through what you saw, what you heard, and what happened?
We were changing our classes, and then we was inside the hallway, and then we just heard a gunshot, and then this boy had a gun, and then he shot one boy in his side, and then we all ran back to our classroom, and some people ran outside, and then we were just in the classrooms till it was over.
And as a parent, how does it make you feel to hear your daughter describing something that you weren't able to protect her from in that moment?
It's hard to say, because all I would say, I'm just glad she okay, you know. But my heart was in my stomach, you know, because I couldn't find her. Nobody wouldn't tell me nothing. And, you know, it's just a stressed out situation. You know, because you don't know if your kid got shot or, you know, I mean, I was so terrified, I didn't know what to do. I didn't. I started crying because I didn't know, you know, if she had got hurt or not, you know. It just, all I got to tell parents is no disrespect, teach your kids not to be bullies, and, you know, try to teach them, protect them the best way you can. When they come to you with a problem, listen. All you got to do is listen. Even if you can do something about it or not, just listen. You know, it might save a life.
Wow.
So.
And, you know, moving forward, you know, how do you think this will affect things? Do you feel safe sending your daughter to school, or what's next?
I really don't feel safe, but I know she got to go to school, and I hope they put up metal detectors and protect the kids better than they do, you know. That's all I got to say, because people not safe nowhere. I think they need more security at these schools. more security, because they don't have enough. One police officer can't watch everything. You know, they can't watch everything. So that's why they need metal detectors and all that up in there. You know, scanners, see if you got a gun, knife, whatever, you know, keep the kids safe. Because I almost had a heart attack, I ain't gonna lie to you. I was so scared, it didn't make no sense.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to reunite with your daughter.
Me too.
And one more question for you. For parents that haven't made it here to the church yet, can you talk about the process of getting in? Was it easy? Was it difficult? What should other parents know?
It's easy to get in. All you gotta do is sign your name and your child name. And when your child come in or whatever, they ask for their name, and then they'll come and call their name. And once they call their name, you come out and get your child, and y'all can go. But it's easy to get them, though.
All right. Is there anything else?
You have to have ID. If you ain't got ID, you can't get your child.
Perfect. Anything else you'd like to tell me or tell those watching right now at home?
No, that's it.
Okay. And Miss Prentasia, would you like to say anything else about what you saw or how you feel right now?
I feel shaky because I was there, and then most people, he was crying, and then I was like, calm down, it's gonna be okay. And yeah.
So you were able to kind of be there for your friends during the situation?
Mm-hmm.
And would you say, do you think the school has prepared you for situations like this, or do you think you learned this at home? Where do you think that comes from?
My principal, he prepares her for like lockdowns, like to know like, is there going to be like a real one? And yeah.
And last thing, maybe a message for other students on how they can be brave like you were as far as helping other students. What message would you give them?
To stay calm, be quiet, it's going to be okay, and don't cry.
Stay calm, be quiet, it's going to be okay, don't cry. Words from Prentasia, a 7th grader who says she witnessed what happened. Miss Angela, thank you for your time as well. Again, we are at Brookwood Church where parents are being reunited with their students, with their kids. So I'll go ahead and send it back to you for now. I'm so glad you all are okay.
Thank you. And I didn't mind at all. Thank you.
Oh, dear.
Rashad, thank you so much. I mean, hearing that mother talk about being outside of the school, and as all those officers...
Yes, she happened to have a meeting about that time.
Oh, Jane, I could not have... I can't fathom the fear that went through her mind.
Right. She's seeing, and she said, I saw all these law enforcement officers running into the school, and they told me you can't go in, and they all had guns, not little pistols,
Yes.
long guns.
Yes.
I mean, really, and her composure now is so impressive.
Yeah.
But really, her daughter, to hear Prentasia say that all of her classmates were crying, and she was saying to them, it's okay, calm down. And what a compliment to her principal and to the people at her school, that she felt like, yes, they had been prepared. But also, isn't it heartbreaking to hear a 7th grader talk about how she heard gunshots in her school? And if I understood correctly, Nigel, she said she saw a boy shoot another one in the side.
Yeah.
Is that what she said? And I just, again, you can't unsee these things. And we just hopefully can help them untangle them.
Yep. And according to the school district, those shots rang out around 12:30 today. Greenville County Schools had reports of shots fired inside the building at Tanglewood Middle School. The school resource officer immediately responded and notified law enforcement. Multiple law enforcement agencies responded. And as you heard the mother there say, there were officers from the city, from the county, from the sheriff's office, from SLED, from FBI, the ambulance. I mean, she went down the list because she was in the parking lot when they all arrived. So we do know one student was transported to the hospital. Their condition is not known at this time. We do know, according to the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, that another student, a male, was arrested and found near the school, right outside the area of the school, or very close to the school. The sheriff said that young man is in custody right now. So that situation...
He's a juvenile, so they haven't been able to talk to him yet.
Right. But of course, we're going to learn more about that. We do have our Kylie Jones, who is on the ground near the school as well. And Kylie, what can you tell us?
Hey, yeah, Nigel, Jane, things have quieted down quite a bit here. That's some good news. I know you just talked to Rashad. You can see those kids getting off those buses. Just heartbreaking to hear that from those children. We saw the last of some school buses headed back out. Again, this is on Old Easley Bridge Road near Old Dunham Road. Those buses were headed to Brookwood Church. Again, that is where Rashad is at right now. Those children are being reunited with their families. Families were here just a little while ago. The scene here was nothing short of chaotic and a very concerned, very stressful mood. You could just feel that tension here as families tried to figure out what was going on, making sure their children were just safe inside. They were texting with their children, calling their children, just saying this, of course, was their absolute worst nightmare. And we just spoke with Sheriff Hobart Lewis and Superintendent Burke Royster just a little while ago right here. Again, this is Old Easley Bridge Road. There was quite a scene here earlier. Sheriff Lewis said more than 200 deputies were surrounding the entire Tanglewood Middle School area. And he said hats off to those deputies and the laundry list of other agencies who helped get all of these children to safety, helped lock down that school, and essentially find and arrest that shooter, who is also a student. Now, Sheriff Lewis did let us know that the student who was shot in the front part of the school. He could not confirm where exactly that student was shot, but they said the shooter, again, another student, was found very close to Tanglewood Middle School. And again, he is just thanking the hard work of his deputies and the other law enforcement agencies who jumped into action here. He is really saying this is exactly what they trained for, and he said they executed. And again, the scene is widely cleared here tonight. You will hear from parents both as it was happening, as they're meeting their children, and you'll also hear from Superintendent Royster and Sheriff Lewis himself. I'll step out of the way just to give you guys an idea of what things look like now. Things are essentially back to normal right here. Now, Tanglewood Middle School is down Old Easley Bridge Road that way. We were unable to get closer at the time. We're going to try to get a little closer in the next hour or half hour or so. We will continue to keep you guys updated, but Jane and Nigel, I'll send it back over to you guys in the studio.
Really, thank you. An evolving situation there on the ground at Tanglewood. If you're just joining us, it's 3:18 now. This is a situation that's been unfolding for almost 3 hours. Just before 12:30 this afternoon, the school resource officer at Tanglewood Middle School, this is in Greenville County, kind of in the western part of Greenville County, called the sheriff's office. He or she had heard shots fired inside the school and immediately contacted Greenville County Sheriff's Office asking for backup. According to the sheriff, immediately 100 sheriff's deputies headed to the scene. Another 100 came later, but other law enforcement officers also heard that. SLED, FBI, DEA, of course, Greenville Police sent a number of officers as well, and even South Carolina Highway Patrol, all converging and putting that plan in place, the plan that has been set up and tested by a special unit within the Greenville County Sheriff's Office that works specifically with Greenville County schools. And so you have to say that kudos to all of the people involved with law enforcement within the school district and within that particular middle school, that every single plan that was put in place was effective. And according to the website, the principal there is Dr. Grayson Wells. And we just heard from a young lady, a 7th grade student who was talking to Rashad Williams. Printasia told him, he said, ask her, did you feel like you were prepared for this? And she said, yes, our principal told us what to do. And so, again, hats off to all of the people, the teachers and the administrators at that school, that students understood exactly what they would need to do in case a situation like this ever happened. Yeah,
Greenville County Sheriff Hobart Lewis said they had been rehearsing and practicing for this very situation, hoping it never happened, but definitely making sure that if it did, they were prepared. Our Taggart Houck is live on the ground. Taggart, what can you tell us? What are you seeing where you are right now?
Nigel and Jane, first, I will give you a little bit of a look at where we're at. Okay, we are across from the Easy gas station. I'm going to step out of the frame. Probably about 40 minutes ago, to put a number on it, this whole road was just covered with school buses. I mean, it was a line stretching for what seemed like forever, really until Tanglewood Middle School. That has since changed within the last 20 minutes. This has all opened up. You've got one law enforcement vehicle in front of us, but from what we are seeing now, and again, we're in the parking lot of Liberty Ministries Church International. This was also where the sheriff held a press conference about a half hour ago. We are seeing things move pretty well toward the direction of Tanglewood, which is actually that way. It has been said before in this broadcast, but Greenville County Sheriff Hobart Lewis really did praise the efforts of the law enforcement officers and the responders who came to this school. The information we have is that that call came in around 12:30 this afternoon, coming from a school resource officer. We later learned from the press conference with Superintendent Dr. Burke Royster and Greenville County Sheriff Hobart Lewis that, in fact, the school resource officer was the one who called that in. It happened in the front of Tanglewood Middle School. The front portion of the building is what we know at this time. We know that there are a lot of questions, especially coming from parents and guardians of the students here at this school. The information that we have been given and the information that has been released at this time, very preliminary. In fact, we learned from this press conference from the sheriff and Greenville County School Superintendent Dr. Burke Royster that the student was a male involved in this shooting, and that student has not yet been questioned. The sheriff saying that there are proper procedures that have to be followed in order for that to happen. That was about all he said as far as the suspect in this case. As far as the victim in this case, we understand, of course, that person has been hospitalized, and really not much information at this point on that as well. But you talk about the logistics into this and the response. I want to tell you a little bit about what I saw. We came here about, we were here probably within the last hour. We have seen things move quite a bit. But if you were to go over that way, and Don, we'll just show everybody a little bit down this area here. Just probably about a quarter mile down this road is where you would get into Tanglewood Middle School. Now, that whole section, as I mentioned, was covered with school buses and all kinds of other agencies. We saw shirts from the FBI. I even heard deputies on scene talking about SLED. So this whole area has been full of law enforcement for the better part of the afternoon. But something I wanted to touch on here is also the resources from the school side of things. You had an enormous amount of buses. Dr. Royster saying about 25 to 40 school buses. And the question was asked during his press conference about how that is going to affect the logistics of other schools as well. He said that for certain schools within the district, there will be logistical challenges, in some cases probably delays. He said that the parents and students of those schools within the district have been notified, so this should not at least come as a surprise to parents or students in those schools. But you look at the number of resources, both on the law enforcement side as well as the school side, a lot of officials here wasting no time getting out to this scene, which, by the way, as we've mentioned, has been clearing over time. I do want to tell you, just for those folks who don't know as much about Tanglewood Middle School, this is a school that has a little bit less than 800 students. It serves grades 6 through 8. And Rashad, really did such a great job talking with the parents at that location over at Brookwood Church, where they are trying to get to their students. We know that, from here to Simpsonville, that is a little bit of a drive. And I know that for some parents, that is a drive that is probably pretty easy to make. That being said, we have talked to some parents here on the ground who have had trouble with getting that kind of transportation. You also heard, if you were listening to the Facebook Live press conference from the sheriff and the superintendent, that there was talk also about identification in picking up that student. Those are not predominant concerns that I've heard here, but they are concerns that I've heard from some parents and guardians in this area, especially when it comes to transportation, getting to those students. So I have not seen any parents within the last probably 10 to 15 minutes. We are working to get a better sense of what they are going through in this area right now. As far as the official information, again, the details very limited, but there is a reason for that. The departments are going through the proper protocols right now, and I know that we are interested in learning a little bit more about the current situation of Tanglewood Middle School, what that school looks like from the front right now as far as a presence. And again, Rashad talking about the parents at Brookwood Church in that lot, what they are going through, those parents and guardians. So again, we are continuing to gather information. Tanglewood Middle School, you've got a student population less than 800 students. This is a school that serves 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders. And as we work to get more of that information, we are going to continue to keep you updated here. Of course, as you've seen, Kylie and Rashad both on the ground. And we are going to see what we can find out here a little bit more in the form of parents as well to deliver that information to you. So from that being said, we're going to send it back to you. For now, in Greenville County, this is Taggart Hauk, WYFF News 4. We are going to get it right back to the studio.
Taggart, thank you very much. The time now is 3:27, and we are continuing to follow this breaking news story. A shooting at Tanglewood Middle School. One student taken to the hospital, one student arrested. The Greenville County Sheriff's Office saying that the suspect is in custody and they are not looking for anyone else. So that part of the story may be over, but there's a whole other part of the story that is still developing. Right now is dismissal for a number of middle schools, pretty much all middle schools in Greenville County, and soon high schools as well. The superintendent, Dr. Burke Royster, says that a number of the buses in the school district have been used by Tanglewood Middle School to move students from Tanglewood Middle to Brookwood Church so they could be reunited, the students, with their parents. So the district is down a number of buses. So dismissal at middle schools and high schools may be delayed. The superintendent basically saying, have patience, and if the buses at your child's school are going to be delayed, that a call will go out notifying you that it probably already has gone out, notifying you that there will be a delay in dismissal because of the situation.
And again, they have to evacuate as part of this protocol, active shooter protocol, everybody from the building.
Yep.
They can't let any parents pick their children up at Tanglewood. They can't even let any staff get in their own cars and drive home. Everybody that was in that building has to be put on one of those 25 to 40 buses and transported to Brookwood. And then that gives law enforcement an opportunity to comb through that school looking for any other hazards, any other weapons that may be there, so that they can completely and finally secure the scene. The sheriff was saying earlier today that Dr. Burke Royster was on that scene helping with that evacuation. Dr. Burke Royster, of course, superintendent of Greenville County Schools. Rashad Williams is at Brookwood. You're seeing live shots of Brookwood here from Sky 4. Rashad, you have talked to some parents and even a student. Very moving what's happening there on the ground.
Absolutely, it was moving. It was almost heartbreaking to hear a 7th grader talk about the preparation for an event like this. You know, with preparation, you hope to never have to use it, but that was put to the test today. She described to me, you know, how she was kind of the rock for some of her friends, telling them not to cry, that it's going to be okay, we can get through this, we've got this. Again, it's incredible for a 7th grader to say that. We talked to Miss Angela, her mother, who was there as everything was unfolding. She was there for a meeting as police and first responders started to show up. You know, she, again, a concerned parent trying to figure out what's going on but not being told anything. She also told me right after the interview that she did see someone being wheeled out on a stretcher. She told me this right after the interview, and her daughter was also describing the gunshot that she saw. A boy shot another boy, is what she said to me, in the side. So I'm going to step out of the way again here at Brookwood Church in Simpsonville on the backside. The scene can kind of speak for itself. I have not been inside yet, but as parents and students come out, you can feel the emotion. We've seen tears, we've seen hugs, you know, we've seen a little laughter as well, which I think comes from parents being able to laugh with their kids again, knowing that their kids are okay, coming here to pick them up. Something else that Miss Angela mentioned during my interview, as far as getting in, for parents that aren't here yet, that are working to get here, she said it's pretty easy. You just follow the direction that law enforcement are pointing you to. You come to the back, you sign your name as the parent, and you sign your child's name, and then you should be able to go in and grab your student to see them again. So again, the scene right now is, you know, it's been active the entire time that we've been here. Parents are still flooding into the parking lot to grab their students. A lot of them are coming out. A lot of the students that I've seen also are coming out with their heads down, or coming out with tears, and the parents are consoling them. The parents are holding them. So again, you can feel the emotion that's happening here at Brookwood Church. We've got some students coming out right now in the back with their parents, and we still have parents going inside as well, as I described, but the police presence is still heavy here. We've got some fire crews on scene as well. Right behind the camera, we've got people being directed out of the parking lot. So for now, I'm going to work to try to talk to some more parents to capture what happened in that moment. So for now, I'm live in Greenville County. Rashad Williams, WYFF News 4. We'll send it back to you.
Rashad, thank you. And where Rashad is right now, we are told that the school district has brought in psychologists and counselors to help the students that are arriving, and the faculty as well, arriving and deal with the trauma of what they've experienced. What we don't know is the condition of the student that was taken to the hospital.
Yeah, the sheriff has indicated that it is a male student, and so that would be somebody between, what, like 12 and 14 or 15?
Yeah, if it's a 7th grader, that student was probably around 12 or 13. Yeah.
So that student is in the hospital. Again, the person who is in custody, also a male, and that person is in custody. The sheriff seeming very sympathetic when he talked about the person in custody during the news conference. He said, you know, we're not even really sure that it's a juvenile, not even really sure that he knew what was going on. He was just off the school grounds. We don't want to make any assumptions about where, but there are a lot of woods around Tanglewood Middle School, and they said that the sheriff's deputies did apprehend the suspect just off the school grounds. When asked by the media if he surrendered or turned himself in, the sheriff indicated that the student was hiding and huddled, and he said he was hiding when the deputies found him. It was a young man, and the sheriff said, quoting here, "I don't think he knew what to do."
Yeah,
he's a juvenile.
For the parents, for the students, for the faculty, for so many, for the students at Tanglewood Middle School, so many don't know what to do now.
But what wonderful training.
Yes.
You know, and again, I know that we sometimes hear from parents, and the sheriff even made mention that sometimes parents will say, "Why are you scaring my child by making them do these exercises, these drills, these active shooter drills?" But clearly the answer is because we live in a broken world, and these things actually happen, and your child is safer if they know what to do in this situation.
And Rashad interviewed a 7th grader who said that very thing, that she knew what to do because her principal made them practice.
Right.
You know, and the Greenville County Sheriff, Hobart Lewis, said the officers knew what to do because this is what they practice. They practice this hoping to never have to do it for real. But unfortunately today, around 12:30, they did have to do it for real.
We observed as we came on the air to bring all of this to you live shortly after 1 o'clock this afternoon. We had Sky 4 over the scene at Tanglewood. This is before we had been notified that the suspect was in custody. But it was our observation that early, just 35 minutes into this whole situation, that law enforcement and school officials very much had this whole situation in control. There was already an immediate law enforcement presence, a huge media law enforcement presence. Within half a mile of the school, they had a staging area set up that included emergency medical vehicles. It included fire vehicles, and of course a great deal of law enforcement from all different agencies. The sheriff said SLED, FBI, DEA, other school officers from other schools all converged on the scene. Greenville Police, South Carolina Highway Patrol. And then shortly after that, here came the buses, 25 to 40 buses.
So imagine that's in a time frame of 30 minutes or less from officers arriving to buses loading students up.
Logistically, very impressive.
The logistics of that, Jane.
Absolutely.
And this is what the school district says it practiced for. But look at this video here. And I didn't want to say it until we had it confirmed, but we were watching live as students were getting on the bus and then were escorted by law enforcement to Brookwood Church. Every bus, this is the buses lining up, you see it there, but every bus was escorted by law enforcement to Brookwood Church.
Yeah, Rashad
keeping the
confirmed
kids
that.
safe all that way.
Very
till they were
impressive.
in the arms of their parents.
Well, Kylie Jones is at what was the staging area, or near what was the staging area close to Tanglewood Middle School. What does the scene look like there now, Kylie, 3 hours later?
Yeah, Jane, well, we've actually gotten to move just a little further up Old Easley Bridge Road towards Tanglewood Middle School. I'll step out of the way. You can still see dozens of law enforcement cars on the scene. Those are their lights down there right towards the entrance of Tanglewood. You can see it down there. Again, dozens of law enforcement cars on the scene. Sheriff Lewis said at its highest there were more than 200 deputies on the scene, in addition to a long list of other agencies from neighboring towns, cities, and counties, even throughout the state on this scene. And again, Sheriff Lewis says thankfully it was all of their work that helped contain this scene, keep it from getting even more out of hand and ending potentially even worse. And they will likely be on scene for a little while longer at least. I know the question came when we spoke to Sheriff Lewis and Superintendent Burke Royster earlier today was, will there even be school for Tanglewood Middle School tomorrow? And that answer is still unclear. Superintendent Royster said that decision will be made later today. Again, a lot of investigation, a lot of looking into this incident and figuring out what exactly it was that happened. Now, Sheriff Lewis did say earlier today that he could confirm that student was shot in the front of Tanglewood Middle School. He could not confirm just exactly where that happened, but Sheriff Lewis had a few words for us earlier this afternoon.
It's been a very trying situation for sure. Our heart goes out to the family, all the families involved. We certainly ask that you pray for the family of the victim, for sure, as information develops about his status, but also the children at the school. It's a very traumatic time for them. So please keep them and their families in your thoughts and prayers.
And that child who was shot was taken to the hospital. The shooter, again, also a student, according to the sheriff's office, was taken into custody and was arrested very close to Tanglewood Middle School. And again, as you can hear from parents, just heartbreaking and their absolute worst nightmare. You can see from the parents and families Rashad has spoken to, those children and families are just thankful to be reunited. But we will continue to stay on the scene with live team coverage. Jane and Nigel.
All right, Kylie, thank you very much. This situation is continuing to unfold as students are being reunited with their parents. I believe our Taggart Hauk is live, not far from where Kylie was. Tag, what are you seeing there?
And Nigel, Jane, just want to give you an alternate view. I know you saw a lot from Kylie, what she was saying as well, but I'm just going to step off to the side here. And this is the kind of the other side of Tanglewood Middle School, but we talk about the law enforcement presence. It is something we have talked about for hours now. You've got the quick response. That call coming in around 12:30 this afternoon. Almost immediately, it seemed that students were being evacuated from the school. And within the last 45 minutes or so, when we were just further up the road, this area here, as you can imagine, was just completely blocked off. You actually had all of the sheriff's vehicles. You also have a bunch of different agencies here as well, but then the school buses beyond that as well. So this stretch is now starting to clear up just a little bit. I can tell you from where we're at a church just across the street from the school, and that is also where we have seen agencies including SLED. We have seen ATF, and we understand that the FBI has also been on scene too. We did just hear from Greenville County Sheriff Hobart Lewis, and Jane and Nigel have been talking about this a good bit as well, but the sheriff really, praising the response here and just how quick everything happened. I don't think that can be stated enough when we talk about a situation like this. The other part that I want to talk about is we talk about the suspect here. Obviously, there are a lot of questions that people still have about that, and there's a lot of answers that we just don't have at this point in time. It's not yet clear if they have been able to interview this person. At the time of the press conference earlier this afternoon, I'd say about 45 minutes ago, the sheriff was saying that that was still not something that they were doing. There are a couple of different procedures in place they have to go to. And while we're here, I do also want to give you an idea of what we're seeing in front of me this way. So Don, if we could just show people, this is just an example of some of the clear out that we are seeing out here. Don Jackson, he's going to swivel this camera around. That vehicle that you're seeing right there, that is actually a command operations center. It is the sheriff's vehicle, and that appears now to be leaving the scene. But like I said, when we were here about 40 minutes ago, we couldn't get anywhere near that vehicle. This is a sign that things are starting to clear up by Tanglewood Middle School. And you see that's pulling out there toward the direction of the school. There's also, of course, an ATF shirt right there as well. So this just gives you an idea of the folks we are seeing here on scene. Now, we talked about the sheriff. The superintendent was also on scene. The sheriff said that the superintendent quickly got inside, got at least to the site of the building, started evaluating what needs to be done from a district standpoint. That includes the transportation, getting those students out of there. We did hear from Superintendent Dr. Burke Royster with the sheriff and the superintendent. We have some sound of that. I want to play that. The superintendent sharing his thoughts right now on this situation.
This is as I think we would all look at this, it's a senseless tragedy, and unfortunately one that occurs all too often in today's society, where people perhaps resort to violence, and it has a lasting impact on all those that are in proximity to it.
Yes, and while this scene appears to be in the beginning stages of perhaps clearing up, we should also note that perhaps inside that building and in other parts of the county, when you talk about the parents and the guardians, there's still a great deal of concern, essentially the unknown of what really happened in this school and even what led up to this event. It is worth noting, it's been said before, the district has not yet made a decision on school for tomorrow. Dr. Royster saying that if there is a change in that, that information would likely come out later this afternoon. For now, we're going to send it back to you in the studio in Greenville County. This is Taggart Hauk, WYFF News 4.
Taggart, thank you. Really setting a scene for what's going on there now, some 3 hours afterward at the scene where it happened.
Yeah, and we want to take you now to Brookwood Church, where our Rashad Williams is, where students and their parents are being reunited. Rashad.
During the last hit, I explained to you that parents were still actively coming out of Brookwood Church, reunited with their children, and one of the families that I ran into here, great family. I wish we were able to speak under better circumstances, but I saw you walking out with your arms around your kids. How does that feel to you? Can you describe that to me to know that they're okay?
Sense of relief, really. I mean, unfortunate situation what took place, but just glad to have my kids and able to just hold my arms around them.
And can you tell me, how did you get word? Where were you? What happened? Walk me through your mind. Paint a picture for me.
I was at American Freight on Anderson Road, right off White Horse Road, approximately about a mile away from the school. Heard all these sirens going down the road, about 100 cop cars, all kinds of fire trucks, ambulances, everything going on. And then I called my wife, said, hey, what's going on? Call the school, because I heard from a friend that there were something going on at my kid's school. So I called and we found out it was active shooting going on at the school, unfortunately.
And when you confirm that there's an active shooting at your children's school, what goes through your mind and how does that make you feel?
Oh, I was hysterical. I was panicking. I was in panicking mode. I was in dad mode. I wanted to go down to school and get my kids. But unfortunately, you know, in them situations, it's best to just contain your emotions at that time. Just thank God they're okay, and just prayers out to the people that got hurt in that situation.
And something you just said, you know, I'm not a father, but you mentioned dad mode. And, you know, being unable to be there to protect your children in that situation. You mentioned sometimes situations that are just like that, but, you know, how was that for you, knowing that your children are in need, but you weren't able to be there because of the circumstances of the situation?
I just prayed. That's all I needed to do. I prayed, and I was like, God, just bring my kids home to me. I mean, I want to hold them in my hands. So that is all I need to do is just pray, because I didn't want to go there and call chaos or anything for the cops and everything that was everybody that was in the situation. I just prayed.
Can you introduce us to your son and your daughter here?
Yeah, this is my son Gabriel Segui. He's in the 8th grade at Tanglewood, and this is my daughter Madison Segui. She's in the 6th grade at Tanglewood.
All right, so we'll start with 8th grade. Gabriel, can you describe to me what you heard, if you saw anything? You know, what was it like for you being on the inside?
I heard a gunshot, and it was very, very sad. I heard a gunshot. It was very, very sad.
And if it's okay for you to describe to me, how were your friends reacting to what was happening?
They were mad. They were mad that this dude shot the 2 kids, everything. So.
And for you, did you hear anything or see anything?
I heard a gunshot. That's about it.
And how did that make you feel?
I felt scared because I didn't have my phone and have no contact to my dad or my stepmom, so I was scared.
And then you not being able to contact them in that moment, I'm sure was
right. So I started reaching out. Fortunately, her Spanish teacher texted me yesterday, so I had her number. So I started reaching out to her. So she kept me in the loop and let me know Madison was doing okay and everything. The situation was under control.
Wow, what are the odds? That's a phone number you didn't know that you were going to need.
Absolutely.
You said the Spanish teacher texted you yesterday, and you still had that phone number, and you were able to utilize that today.
That is exactly right. So this, for anybody that's never gone through this, we pray that you don't ever have to, because it's a very scary situation.
And that was actually what I was going to ask you. Maybe if you can go into a little more detail for parents that have never been in this situation, and I don't know if you've been in this situation before either. So maybe from your perspective as a first-time parent going through this, and for other parents that, you know, we pray that they never have to go through this, but what can they expect, and what kind of mindset should they have moving forward?
Just pray. That's all I need to do. Don't try to be big-headed. Don't try to be a big head and go in there and interrupt what the law enforcement is trying to do. Let them do their job. I know it's hard to do as a dad or a mom to sit back, but just let the pros handle the situation and get it under control. And when you get your kids in your hands, just don't ever not cherish another moment.
Wow. Wow, you know, that's all I can say with that is wow. Something else that comes to my mind, you mentioned the pros. How does it make you feel as a parent to know that law enforcement responded the way that they did at the middle school, and also here, you know, at the site of where you're picking up your children? It's pretty secure in here.
Yes, it's very secure. It's coming in. I saw all kinds of law presence coming in, and people just watching the news broadcasts and everything. Law enforcement couldn't express my gratitude just for being on scene, getting there quickly, and taking control of the situation.
All right, and the last question for you two, were you able to undergo any training since you've been in school? Did you feel prepared for a situation like this?
Yeah, I did.
What about you?
Yeah.
And I guess are you glad you've had trainings to know what to do in a situation like this? Now, a lot of times we can say that we know what we would do when something happens, but you really don't until it happens.
Absolutely.
So again, do you feel like the training prepared you?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you two are doing okay, and I'm glad you're able to hug your children again.
Yes.
Okay.
So I really appreciate it. We'll go ahead. I'm live here in Greenville County. This is Rashad Williams, WYFF News 4. We'll send it back to you in the studio. Wow, some moving words here from this family.
Rashad, thank you very much. And yes, as that father said, just pray. There's so many people who are affected by what happened today. And as that father just said, pray.
And pray and stay out of the way. It was nice to hear him express that gratitude to law enforcement for locking everything down so quickly. But it is heartbreaking when you hear middle school students say, and I'm quoting here, "I heard a gunshot," and it was a very, very sad to hear a gunshot. This is something that they are processing now inside of Brookwood Church. That is where all 750 plus students were taken, plus all of the faculty and staff of Tanglewood Middle School, so that they will stage there, and then they will leave one at a time, and they will literally log out. They'll make sure that every single student and staff member is accounted for, and while they are there, again, this is part of the active shooter protocol. One of the final steps is making sure that there are mental health professionals, counselors available, so that they can talk to these students and the parents and guardians immediately. Don't wait until they go home. Process it, begin that processing of this right now.
And that is what's happening at Brookwood Church. But at Tanglewood Middle, there's a whole investigation that is taking place right now. The Greenville County Sheriff Hobart Lewis said basically the middle school is a crime scene right now, that they're going to spend hours searching the school, going through every nook and cranny of the building. And remember, when people were evacuated or walked out, escorted out of the building, they don't say, all right, go get all your bags and get all your stuff and carry it with you on the bus. No, you leave all that stuff there. So all those bags, all that stuff, officers are going to have to look through, because that is an active crime scene. They have to look for guns or any evidence involved in the shooting for their investigation. And
fortunately, it seems that sheriff's officers were able to determine pretty quickly that there was only one shooter. He was acting alone, and also to be able to find him, to locate him. They did locate him just off the school grounds. He wasn't far away. Sheriff Hobart Lewis said that it was a young man, a juvenile, who was hiding from deputies. But when he saw the deputies and they told him to come, he didn't put up any resistance. Again, one student, a middle school male, has been shot, was transported to the hospital. We do not have a condition yet for the victim in this shooting, but we will continue to follow that for you. A heartbreaking situation today unfolding in Greenville, South Carolina, just before 12:30. A school resource officer at Tanglewood Middle School reporting that gunshots were fired. Law enforcement, hundreds of law enforcement from multiple law enforcement agencies responded to the scene immediately. The school was locked down. Greenville County School Superintendent Burke Royster was immediately on the scene to help with logistics of getting the students out. As Nigel mentioned momentarily, just a moment ago, it was an incredibly impressive scene to see immediately, before an hour. 25 to 40 school buses lined up, each one escorted by law enforcement, as law enforcement formed a human barrier on either side of the sidewalk. Students came out of the school very quietly in single file. They loaded onto those school buses. They were escorted to Brookwood Church, some 15 miles away in Simpsonville. But again, all of this is planned ahead of time, that if there's an active shooter, here is the protocol that will be put in place. The sheriff and Dr. Royster, in their news conference shortly after 2 o'clock, could not have been more could not have praised other law enforcement agencies or one another more. It's very important to note that Greenville County Sheriff's Office has a dedicated unit dedicated just to Greenville County schools. And Greenville County is sort of an unusual county in that it's one of the largest counties in the state, the most populous, but it has one school district. And we have one sheriff's office. And so they work together to streamline the process. And today, sadly, one student has been shot, but the process is streamlined. The shooter, the person believed to be the shooter, is in custody. Everyone was moved out. The sheriff has reported that no one else was injured, and it was calm and it was orderly. And hopefully, Nigel, that will help tonight as the students process all of this with their parents, grandparents, and guardians, that there was no further chaos after the shooting. Everything was calm and orderly after that shooting.
It was. And the Greenville County School District is the largest school district in the state of South Carolina. And my phone was just ringing a short time ago from the Greenville County School District, letting me know that the buses for my kids' school, I've got an elementary school student, a middle school student, and a high school student, letting me know that the buses that my kids would use are delayed. So there are a number of schools all over Greenville County School District that are dealing with delays because of the situation that played out at Tanglewood Middle School. So many buses were needed at that school to transport everyone to where they need to go. So basically, the situation is still unfolding, and it is going to be a long night as we figure out what happened and the condition of the young man that was shot, what's going to happen tomorrow, and there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. I'm going to recap real quick. At approximately 12:30 p.m., Greenville County Schools had reports of shots fired inside the building at Tanglewood Middle School. The school resource officer immediately responded and notified law enforcement. Multiple law enforcement agencies responded to the scene. One student has been transported to the hospital. Their condition is not known at this time. All the students were taken to Brookwood Church, and that is where they were reunited with their parents or their guardian. That address, in case you need it, is 580 Brookwood Point Place in Simpsonville, and that is where the reunions are taking place. In order to get your student, you have to have identification. In order to pick up your student, you have to have identification. Parents not able to pick up their students at Tanglewood, but one of our reporters was talking to a mom at Tanglewood who was arriving for a meeting right after the shooting had taken place, and she said she saw officers with long guns running and surrounding the school. She's in the parking lot. She wanted to get in the school. The officers were like, "You cannot get in the school. Get back in your car." So that mom then had to leave and figure out what was going on, knowing that something very serious had just taken place in her child's school. There's so many reunions that we've been seeing taking place as Sky 4 sees parents and guardians hugging their children as they walk out of Brookwood Church after being reunited with their loved ones. Again, the situation started around 12:30 and it has been unfolding, and we have a long night ahead of getting some questions answered about the suspect, about the victim, and about how everything played out and what happens next. We have been following breaking news all afternoon of a school shooting in Greenville County.
Continuing coverage now. This is to recap what we can tell you about what happened. The first call came in just before 12:30 this afternoon. A school resource officer at Tanglewood Middle School called for help after a student was shot. The accused shooter is now in custody. We do not right now have an update on the condition of the student who was shot. We want to send you out to our Kylie Jones, who has been on scene since students were let out this afternoon. She is joining us now live from Tanglewood Middle School in Greenville. Kylie.
And Gabby, this is the closest we've been able to get all day. We are now in front of Tanglewood Middle School, but of course you can see behind me it is taped off. There are still dozens of deputy and law enforcement cars still on the scene. They, like you guys have been saying, have a long night of investigating and a long couple days and couple weeks ahead of them to investigate. I'll give you a look at the scene behind me. I'll step out of the way. Again, lots of law enforcement cars still at Tanglewood Middle School. The school, again, has been completely evacuated. We saw a number of school buses coming along Old Easley Bridge Road earlier this afternoon. They were just waiting in a long line, waiting to get those children and bring them to Brookwood Church, where they can be reunified in Simpsonville with their parents. And again, just an extremely emotional day for all of these families. Some of those students WYFF has talked to had said they heard the gunshots, they saw the commotion, of course, in their classrooms, and they just said it was quite a scary situation. But we'll continue to keep you updated throughout the evening and into the night on this situation. But Gabby, Nigel, I'll toss back to you.
Kylie, thank you very much. And again, the bus situation right now is one of the big stories playing out at this moment. So we've got a lot of students all over Greenville County who are going to have to pack some patience and wait as their bus gets to the school to pick them up. So right now, logistically, the Greenville County School District is trying to deal with all of that as well.
You've been talking about for hours now with you and Jane on air about that tremendous response from law enforcement actually escorting those buses that took those Tanglewood Middle School students to Brookwood Church in Simpsonville. Yeah. A beautiful picture there, and certainly some confidence for those students. Yeah,
it was amazing to see, and every one of those buses were being escorted by law enforcement. So law enforcement has had a day. Again, this all unfolding pretty much around 12:30 and continuing to unfold right now as we begin the 4 o'clock newscast.
Breaking news. This is WYFF News 4 at 4.
And we do want to get right to that breaking news that we've been following all afternoon of a school shooting in Greenville County.
The first call came in just before 12:30. A school resource officer at Tanglewood Middle School called for help after a student was shot. The accused shooter is in custody right now. We do not have an update on the condition of the student who was shot.
We want to send you back out now to our Kylie Jones. She has been on the scene since the students were let out earlier this afternoon, continuing our coverage, telling us how it's looking there on the ground. Kylie, what can you tell us?
Yeah, and Gabby and Nigel, this is the closest we have been able to get to the actual scene all day. We are finally in front of Tanglewood Middle School. It is still taped off. Behind me, I'll give you a quick look. Still dozens of law enforcement cars on the scene. Now we have some exclusive Sky 4 video of the scene throughout the day today. More than 200 deputies were on this scene surrounding the entire Tanglewood Middle School area as deputies tried to lock that scene down and tried to get those students to safety. Again, if you've been with us this afternoon, you know that one student was shot and taken to the hospital. The shooter was taken into custody. The sheriff says nearby Tanglewood Middle School. The sheriff says that shooter was also a student. Both the victim and the shooter, according to the sheriff, were two young men. Now, we spoke to some parents just trying to get in touch with their children this afternoon as the scene unfolded. Hear what one mother had to say about this emotional, chaotic few moments.
I just dropped them off this morning, like I was telling other mothers. I was dropping them off in school, and I told them, I love you, have a great day. I hope you do good in your test, because they were testing. And then next thing you know is I get a call from another parent say, have you heard? And I'm like, have I heard what? They're like, there's a shooting going on in the school. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, yes, they're shooting as we speak. My son, I was talking to him, and they were shooting as we were speaking.
And again, most importantly, what we do know right now is that student who was shot is in the hospital. The shooter, also a student, was taken into custody. Again, Sheriff Hobart Lewis says that all happened very close to Tanglewood Middle School here right now. Again, many days, nights, weeks of investigation ahead. It's unclear if Tanglewood Middle School will have school tomorrow, but Superintendent Royster says that decision will come later today, possibly tonight. We'll continue to keep you guys updated with live team coverage. For now, live in Greenville County, I'm Kylie Jones, WYFF News 4.
Kylie, thank you. And more than 100 law enforcement officers responded to the scene this afternoon.
The Greenville County Sheriff has said that the students and staff worked seamlessly, putting practice drills into action. Our Taggart House joins us now with the latest. Taggart.
Nigel, yeah, you know, we've been talking about this for a little bit. First, I just want to step off. We are just down from where Kylie is, but we've got another view here of Tanglewood Middle School. You can actually see, in some cases, you've got some of the deputy cars out there, and there is at the front of the parking lot what looks to be a bus. That's actually the Greenville County Sheriff's command vehicle. That is set up. That actually moved about 10 minutes ago from a location more so across the street from the school. So we are seeing a bit more movement, at least heading into the school. But yes, you talk about the swift response here. We know the call coming in around 12:30 from the school resource officer. Officials with the school, as well as officials with the sheriff's office and other law enforcement agencies, wasting no time to get here. In fact, really within the hour, you had students that were being escorted on the bus, and they had escorts, as was mentioned a few minutes ago, by law enforcement vehicles. So there has been a very busy day here for law enforcement. We then heard from the sheriff a couple of hours ago and the school superintendent here, Dr. Burke Royster, and both of them really with a glowing review of just the protocols that were followed here and then the response by law enforcement officers.
Is you absolutely have the best law enforcement anybody could have. You have our county deputies, obviously, the city police department. Chief Thompson sent numerous officers over here. The state law enforcement division has officers over here. The ATF, FBI, DEA, school officers who work school security showed up over here. All those people converged on this scene to secure it very quickly.
And I'm not sure, even after a full and thorough law enforcement investigation, anyone will really know what was going through the mind of that young person that took this rash act. So I don't know that there's anyone will ever know except that person and they may not be able to articulate it for you.
Right, we know there are a lot of questions, too, about the suspect in this. During that press conference, we heard very little information, as expected, at this stage of the investigation, other than that suspect is in custody. And at the time of that press conference, about 2 hours ago, that suspect had not yet been interviewed by police. The sheriff saying the reason for that is because there are protocols and procedures that are in place. At that point in time, they were not doing that. But I have to tell you, as much as the response here was heavy, you had all kinds of different agencies helping out. Also the school buses, right? We had about 25 to 40 school buses that were helping get these kids away. The superintendent did say at the time that that was likely going to impact at least getting some of those students in other schools within the district back. Those schools, the parents and students at those schools had been notified whether it was going to affect them, and it has also been said, but the decision about school tomorrow has not yet been made. We are expecting to learn more about that, but the Greenville County Sheriff did basically end his press conference saying that if his children were going here, he would feel comfortable with sending them back tomorrow. For now, in Greenville County, Taggart Houck, WYFF News 4.
Tag, thank you very much. Of course, something like this is just so difficult for parents and caregivers.
And every day we send our kids to school to learn, and we pray that this never happens. Rashad William has been talking with parents and guardians as they've been reunited with their students at Brookwood Church in Simpsonville. Rashad.
Well, I can tell you it's a windy day here at Brookwood Church, and there is a lot of emotion in the air. Right behind me is where parents are coming out after being reunited with their kids. So we spoke with a 7th grader earlier who said she saw the shooting happen, but she described to us that she was the rock for her friends, telling them that it's going to be okay. Don't cry. We can do this. We can make it through this. She also described to us that the principal and the school helped prepare students for situations like this through different trainings. We spoke with a father earlier today who said he wanted to go in dad mode and be there and protect his kids, but because of the circumstances, he was unable to get to his kids right away. So his message to parents was pray and stay out of the way. And he said that worked for him. I'm going to step out of the way. We're going to go ahead and actually take some Sky 4 video right over Brookwood Church. If you can see that parents are still coming out where they're able to pick up their parents. We were told by a mother earlier that once parents get here, they can go inside, they can sign their name, sign their children's name, and then they can be reunited. Again, we can see the hugs. We've seen tears. We've seen laughter. And I believe that laughter comes from parents knowing that they have moments to be able to laugh with their kids again. The father that I spoke with earlier said it felt great just to be able to put his arms around his kids one more time. That relief that he had. I'm not a father, but again, I told him, I said I could feel his emotion. I knew exactly what he meant. And he said, don't take those moments for granted. Cherish every moment that you have, either whether it's with your kids or with your family. Now, one interview that I did earlier with Miss Angela, we're going to go ahead and roll that, and you can really feel her emotion because her daughter says she saw the shooting. So for a parent to know that her child was in a situation like that and she was unable to be there to protect her, here's what she had to say.
I started crying because I didn't know, if she had got hurt or not, It just, all I got to tell parents is, no disrespect, teach your kids not to be bullies, and, try to teach them, protect them the best way you can. When they come to you with a problem, listen. All you got to do is listen. Even if you can do something about it or not, just listen. It might save a life.
Powerful words there. She says all you have to do as a parent is just listen, and it may save a life. Now, Miss Angela also told me during that interview that she was already at the school for a conference, for a meeting. So imagine being a parent, being there for a meeting already, and then comes to the school, and as a parent, I can imagine that you'd want answers right away. And she said that she was unable to get those answers. She was unable to get a hold of her daughter. So as a parent, she's wondering, is my child okay? And she had no idea, but we were able to see her reunite and walk out of here with her daughter. So we want to go ahead and send it back to you. I'm live in Greenville County. Rashad Williams, WYFF News 4.
Such emotion there, Rashad. We thank you so much for bringing us that. We're going to step away from this story right now to bring you some other stories we're following this afternoon. But we will, of course, continue to bring you updates here on air, online, and on WYFF4.com and our mobile app as well.
Yeah, there's a wildfire near the Great Smoky National